Call of Duty Black Ops 4 is one of the most controversial entries in the Call of Duty series, and since we're talking about the same franchise that has games like Ghosts, Modern Warfare 3, the bad one, and the game that literally has the most disliked gaming video of all time, that is saying a lot. There is plenty of reasons for this game's controversy, but in this video I want to focus on the most intricate and impactful part of Black Ops 4. The Zombies mode. Black Ops 4 Zombies is easily the most divisive zombies mode in all of Call of Duty. I say this without any exaggeration. Opinions on this game range from being a flawless masterpiece to complete and utter garbage that has no redeeming qualities. And of course, you can tell from the title where I fall into. To clarify my stance, I don't think this game is horrible. I actually think that it does have plenty of good to offer, and it's certainly light years ahead of some of the truly atrocious games in this franchise. The thing is though, I was never excited for these bad games to begin with, and you can't be disappointed in something that you were never excited for in the first place. On the other hand, Black Ops 4 was a game that I was heavily anticipating from the moment it was revealed. All of the promotional material, interviews, and community reveal that was done in May of 2018 led me and many others to believe that this game was going to completely outclass every other game before it. So when I got a product that didn't even come close to doing that, I was severely disappointed. There are numerous problems that I have with this game, with some being problems that I already had with previous games but made worse here, and entirely new problems that at times completely ruin the game. And you can probably tell from how long this video is that, there's a lot to go over. So let's not waste any more time and get right into this, shall we? Before disappointment comes expectations. For a game like this to be disappointing, there must have been a ton of hype surrounding it, and this is where I want to start. Black Ops 4 was the 5th Zombies game made by Treyarch, and in each entry before this, the mode evolved exponentially. If you look at the first Zombies game, World at War, and the latest Zombies game at the time, Black Ops 3, they look like they came from two completely different franchises. This is obviously because these two games are 7 years apart, and within these 7 years, the game mode has received a ton of refinements, and the technology of the consoles evolved over time as well. But going into how we got to this point in detail is important for establishing why Black Ops 4 had so much hype. Starting from World at War, the game was very primitive. The maps were small, and the basic mechanics that you'd expect from every Zombies game like Perks and Pack-a-Punch weren't even introduced until the DLC. The core gameplay of the mode was great, but World at War was clearly a starting point and had room for numerous improvements and additions. Black Ops 1 would then refine the mechanics, expand the maps, and start to experiment with multiple different things within the maps. Things like unique enemy types, hazards, dynamic environments, Easter eggs, and more. Afterwards, Black Ops 2 would further expand upon these ideas with multiple Easter eggs in one map, the brand new buildable system, features that are connected to multiple maps like the bank and permaperk systems, and most importantly, with the maps Mob of the Dead and Origins, experimented with quest-style map design. This type of map design would then become the foundation of many of the maps of the next game, Black Ops 3. Black Ops 3 would have this consistent quality to it where most of the maps are huge, highly detailed, and have a ton of things to do on them. Furthermore, Black Ops 3 would introduce some pretty game-changing mechanics, prestige system, alternate ammo types, customizable weapons, and of course, gobblegums. Now, that's not to say that some aspects of this game weren't controversial, but it was pretty clear that at this point, Zombies has transformed into something completely different. The production and budget of the mode was at its peak. The content of the mode was the highest it has ever been, with 14 different maps, and the mode was the most successful it has ever been. And everyone thought that Black Ops 4 was going to further evolve the mode from this point. And from the marketing of Black Ops 4, It looked like it was going to. The game would launch with 4 different maps as opposed to the 2 that we're used to, and 3 of which would be available without the need to purchase DLC. The game would have a second brand new story to follow called Chaos, which would have its own set of maps centered around themes that they weren't able to implement due to the restrictions of the old Ether story. But the thing that was hyped up the most about Black Ops 4 during its marketing was its emphasis on customization. The game would allow players to tailor their experience to their liking by providing numerous customizable options in custom game settings, difficulty options, and most importantly, customizing the brand new loadout system. This new system allows you to customize your starting weapon, equipment, specialist, consumables, and perks before starting the match. All of these changes were made to give the player as much variety as possible, and to take this even further, they made some pretty drastic alterations to the gameplay. These alterations were notorious, with some examples being removing Juggernog, the perk that would increase your health in previous games, and allowing players to spawn in with a specialist on round 1, which is a wonder weapon that would normally require a quest of some kind to acquire. Many of these changes did worry some people before the game came out, as they looked like they were too drastic, but people still had faith in the game, as Treyarch's track record at the time was pretty good, and the amount of content that we would receive just on launch day was insane. But that faith would slowly erode away over the life cycle of this game, and that's primarily because of a lot of these ideas that Treyarch tried. Now, I want to be clear on something. My main focus in this video is the maps, and my personal opinion on them. But as the video goes on, I will also cover these other factors that were a detriment to this game, as well as the community reception to these factors and the maps. If you're wondering why I want to bring up the community's opinion alongside my own in this video, it's because the reception towards this game had an impact on how future games would be designed. So with that out of the way, let's get into this game's launch maps. Let's truly start this video strong with one of the most notorious maps in all of zombies. Voyage of Despair was supposed to be the representation of the new direction that Black Ops 4 was going to take. The map had the job of introducing the brand new story of Black Ops 4 called the Chaos Story, as well as give players an idea of what a Chaos Story map would be like. Out of every launch map in this game, Voyage was easily the map that people were most excited about behind Blood of the Dead. Most, if not all of the excitement came from the concept alone, which was a zombies map that took place during the sinking of the Titanic ship. Basing a zombies map on this event was an idea that many people were on board with, and the expectations were high. So, why was this map so hated? Well, first of all, we have to talk about the Titanic itself and how it was significant to this map. As many of you know, the Titanic is a ship that was made in the early 20th century, and at the time of its creation, it was the biggest ship ever made. Not only was it the biggest ship ever made, but it was also thought to be unsinkable. However, in its very first trip, the Titanic hit an iceberg that caused it to sink, and this incident caused the death of over 1,500 people. This incident was one of the deadliest maritime disasters in history, and it gained massive notoriety that continues to grow to this day. The Titanic's notoriety especially grew thanks to movie director James Cameron, which made a movie about this disaster in 1997. This movie, called Titanic, to this day is one of the best-selling movies of all time. However, the Titanic's presence in video games wasn't as noteworthy. As a matter of fact, the Titanic is almost never seen in video games. It's pretty much only seen in indie games. There is no high-profile game that is based on it or includes it in a major way. So having a AAA game like Call of Duty attempt to do anything with Titanic was very surprising, and of course, given the caliber of maps that we've seen before this game came out, many people were heavily anticipating this map. So, what did they do with the Titanic in Voyage of Despair? The first important thing to mention is that the map is mostly set in the first 3 levels of the ship. The other 7 levels of the ship are for the most part completely inaccessible. In the areas that you can access, All of them are designed to be as faithful as possible to the original Titanic. Everything from the furniture to the decoration to the colors and most importantly, the layout. In this regard, the developers have undoubtedly done an incredible job with Voyage of Despair. Atmospherically, this is easily one of the best maps in all of Zombies. Every area of the map, even the inaccessible ones that you can see from the distance, are filled to the brim with detail that really immerses you into the setting. And I'm about to sound like IGN here, but this map really does make you feel like you're in the actual Titanic. Maybe a bit too much. The first issue came from the map's size. Voyage was one of the biggest maps at the time of its release, which that on its own doesn't necessarily make it bad. However, the problem with Voyage was the way that it was big. Voyage has so many areas that serve as nothing more than empty pathways or are just empty space. Like for example, this area here, there's a wall by in the back, and the rest of this area there is nothing. Although these types of areas can be found in other maps, the problem with Voyage of Despair is that it forces you to go through most of these paths. Like for example, if you want to go from the engine room to the top, you have to go through all of this space. The reason why these areas exist is because the map can't cut them, because the map is too linear for any of these areas to be cut. So as a result, these areas are required to be here, which makes map navigation tedious. In addition to this, Voyage takes an already complicated ship layout and makes it more complicated by adding debris that outright blocks certain pathways and forces you to take detours to move forward. Not only does this make the map artificially bigger, but it also makes learning the map for the first time much more challenging. There's so many pathways and you're constantly changing directions and elevations to move forward, which makes it very difficult to backtrack to specific locations. As a first-time player, getting lost while playing Voyage of Despair is very common because the map is designed like a fucking Minecraft cave. The map is also very close quarters. Much of the map's space is very narrow, and the open spaces that the map does have is generally cluttered with a bunch of random shit. You then combine that with Black Ops 4's new respawn system, which forces zombies to despawn from a much shorter range than in the previous games and respawn within a much faster time than in the previous games, and you get a situation where you are trying to navigate this massive maze of a map, and you'll occasionally get ambushed by zombies which are only there to cut your path. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Voyage also has 6 additional enemy types. This includes the napalm zombie that explodes when it gets near to you and takes half of your health, the electric zombie that can blind you, the poison zombie that does damage over time and stop health regeneration, the ice zombie that increases other zombies' health and damage, the stoker which can shoot projectiles and chase you down with a shovel, and of course, this fucking thing. This lovely fella is called a Blightfather, and he can hit you with a melee attack that takes half of your health, can shoot you with projectiles, can grapple you with his tongue, and can lock down anything that can be purchased, like mystery box, wall weapons, the shield, pack-a-punch, etc. All of these enemies will be able to spawn in at once at some point during the match, and if you don't have the means to kill them, you can very easily get overwhelmed. As a launch map that will be played by a bunch of new players, this map is a complete fucking nightmare, and this was why so many people hated this map at launch. Zombies always had a history of maps that were hated partially or mainly due to their claustrophobic layouts. The most prominent examples of this are 5 and Shangri-La from Black Ops 1, so it was no surprise that Voyage would be among that crowd. However, the hate that Voyage received was far stronger than both of these maps. This is because Voyage wasn't just claustrophobic, it was claustrophobic, it was massive, it was complicated, and it had a bunch of enemy types, far more than both of these other maps. It also didn't help that, like 5, Voyage was released alongside other maps that were far easier to learn, which killed any potential motivation to play this map for many. But say that you take the time to learn this map's layout and see what it truly offers. Is this map actually fun to play once you fully learn it? Let's first look at the benefits. By learning the layout, you'll of course have a far easier time finding perks, pack-a-punch, buildables, etc. And most importantly, you can make good use of the map's fast travels, which, by the way, God bless these things because they single-handedly save this map's layout from being a complete pain in the ass. As for the essentials, the process to get them is very simple. Power can be activated by going to the other side of the map, and pack-a-punch can be activated by interacting with 4 altars. As for what the map offers, let's start with the ballistic shield. One of Black Ops 4's biggest changes that I actually really like was the reworking of the shield mechanic. When the shield was introduced in Black Ops 2, it was a great buildable as it was free defense, but it had little to no offensive value. While you can use it as a melee weapon in Black Ops 2, doing this will also do damage to the shield itself. It actually does so much damage to the shield that your shield can break in mere seconds, and since the shield's main use is to protect your back, this is more often than not a terrible idea. But starting in Black Ops 3, the shield would receive a unique attack in some maps in an attempt to give it some offensive value. There was the rocket shield, which would have a dash attack that can be done 3 times, and the dragon shield, which has the ability to shoot 3 fireballs. Although the dash ability in the rocket shield was complete trash, the fireballs in the dragon shield were actually useful. The drawback though is that you can only replenish these fireballs by progressing through rounds or getting a new shield entirely. But going into Black Ops 4, the shield would be completely reworked. The shield now would cost points the second time you get it, starting at 250 points, and it will get exponentially higher with every purchase until it reaches the max, which is 5,000 points. You can also now repair the shield for half the current price. To compensate for the shield now costing points, the shields in Black Ops 4 are way stronger than the ones in Black Ops 3. One of the game's strongest is Voyage of Despair's ballistic shield. This shield comes with a machine pistol that has 80 bullets in the magazine. In terms of damage, this thing is pretty good, even in the 20s and the 30s. And since this is the first zombies game to introduce a health cap, being at round 35, the ballistic shield remains useful throughout the entire match. Furthermore, you can replenish ammo for the machine pistol by repairing your shield, so you essentially have infinite ammo. And furthermore, this shield can also be upgraded. By doing a very annoying and tedious quest, you can upgrade the ballistic shield into the ice shield. This upgrade increases the durability and strength of the shield, as well as give it a freezing effect, and honestly, this thing is kind of ridiculous. This shield has a machine pistol that essentially has infinite ammo, and each shot does shotgun level damage. But seriously though, the quest for getting this thing is god-awful. To give you an idea, one of the steps requires you to go to the cargo hold where you can find 4 different bone pieces, and you have to take each one to 4 different safes around the map. However, you can only hold 1 bone at a time, so you have to open up a safe and look at the code that is on the safe, then go back to the cargo hold to find a bone that has a piece of paper near it that has the code on it. From there, you can take the bone to that safe, and then you open up another safe and look at its code and go back to the cargo hold and find another bone that has the same code, and repeat this until you finish that one step. While we're on the topic of quests that I hate, I want to give a shout out to the free perk Easter egg in this map. To get the free perk, you have to shoot 6 fish around the map with a sniper. And the annoying thing about this quest is that only 1 of the 6 fish will be visible at a time. So you have to go to every single one of these locations and check if the fish is there. Then once you find it, you have to check the other 5 locations and find the second one, and then check the 4 locations and so on. The locations for these fish are scattered across the entire map, and they are truly horrific. Like, look at this. Look at that. Look at that shit. What is this? You can hear the maniacal laughter of the developers echoing from this location. The thing is, I don't understand why these 2 quests are as obnoxious as they are, when in other maps, the quests for getting either the upgraded shield or the free perk isn't as annoying. But anyways, let's look at the other things that the map offers. The map's main wonder weapon is the Kraken. The Kraken is a triple barrel cannon that will hit multiple zombies at once, and any zombie that wasn't killed from the blast will be knocked down. The Kraken can receive 1 of 4 different elemental upgrades. To get the elemental upgrade that you want, you have to first build the distillation kit, which is a 3-part buildable. Then you have to use the Kraken to kill one of the 4 catalysts, i.e. the elemental zombies, and harvesting their body parts. Then you take the body part to the distillation kit, and then you now have your elemental upgrade. There's the electric upgrade, which whitens the Kraken's blast and essentially turns it into the thunder gun. The ice upgrade that creates small tornadoes that slows down zombies, the poison upgrade, which is essentially a much stronger version of the base Kraken, and finally there's the fire upgrade, which gives the Kraken Dragon's Breath. The cool thing about the Kraken is that even if you are using an elemental upgrade, you can still kill the catalysts with this upgraded Kraken and get access to the other upgrades. So if you want to, you can constantly alternate between the Kraken upgrades, and every single time you change an upgrade, you get full ammo. Or if you want to, you can constantly refill ammo by killing the catalyst that corresponds to your elemental upgrade. The problem with the Kraken though is that the electric Kraken is easily the best one out of the four. The other Krakens aren't bad necessarily, but they're just not as good at killing zombies as the electric Kraken is. The only time I ever switch my Kraken upgrade is if I want to switch to the poison upgrade to kill the Blightfathers in the Easter egg boss fight. This is because the electric Kraken's only weakness is that it doesn't do any damage against Blightfathers. Other than that, there's just no reason to use any other variant. And to be honest, despite how powerful these weapons are, I don't really enjoy using them. For me personally, the most important thing about a wonder weapon is style and presentation. The reason why is because Zombies is already filled with dozens of wonder weapons that can do infinite damage and can take you to high rounds. So the only thing that makes them stand out is style and presentation. And in a series of games that has black hole grenades, shrink rays, fucking guns that make the zombies' heads spin, the Kraken, on the other hand, just feels like a generic fully automatic shotgun. Even the sound effects sound like a shotgun. The upgrades also act like alternate ammo types instead of 4 completely different wonder weapons, which I do understand given how easy they are to get, but I do wish that they had drastically different abilities like the DE bows. Honestly, the Kraken is just underwhelming. Kind of like this map as a whole. When I first got completely used to Voyage's layout and learned the map in its entirety, I actually really enjoyed it. But the more I played it, the more I realized that the massively overcomplicated layout kind of masquerades the fact that this map is actually very simple. In this map, you can very easily get the entire map open, get Pack-a-Punch, and all of the buildables within the first 5 minutes of the match. You can get the Kraken by either hitting the box or doing its side quest, which doesn't take that long. The upgraded shield and free perk quests might be terrible, but all of them can be done in a single round if you hold a zombie. There are other side quests that you can do, but the rewards are terrible. To give some examples, one of them upgrades your Bowie knife to occasionally kill zombies with a single knife. One of them allows you to refill ammo for any of your weapons for a single round, and you can switch your specialist weapon in case you didn't pick the specialist weapon that you want in the main menu, I guess. I want to clarify that I don't have a problem with maps being simple. I have a problem with this map specifically being simple, because the layout is too big and overcomplicated for what it offers. Like, this map has no exclusive weapons or perks, there's no companions, there's no unique way to open the map, there's no challenge system, there's no unique enemy encounters, there's nothing. Even the enemy types in this map aren't unique. 5 of them are in different maps in this game, and one of them is essentially a reskinned Mangler. The only thing that Voyage of Despair has going for it is that you can kill zombies on the Titanic. And the irony of this is that despite the fact that there was clearly an insane amount of effort made to research and recreate the Titanic, it has almost no unique contribution whatsoever to the gameplay and narrative of Voyage of Despair. What I mean by that is that there is no creative idea in this map that couldn't have been easily implemented in any other ship or any setting in general. This is especially the case with the narrative that has such little to do with the Titanic that you can easily switch the map setting to another, and the narrative will not be affected in the slightest. The narrative is about a group of characters going on a heist mission to get an artifact, but then a random bad guy comes from nowhere, snatches the artifact, and uses it to start a zombies outbreak that is then prevented by doing the Easter egg. The Easter egg is not themed around the Titanic, it is instead themed around Norse mythology. The characters have no personal connection to the ship or any of its passengers, and the Titanic doesn't even sink or break in half during the Easter egg. Instead, the ship starts sinking in the outro cutscene, and the ship breaks in half off screen, and the Titanic has literally no effect in any of the story's future events. And as for the gameplay, the only things that have anything to do with the Titanic are things that, again, could have been in any other setting. Like, there's one Easter egg step where you have to interact with dials that the captain and engineers of the ship used for communication, something that is a part of many other ships, or a side Easter egg step where you have to shoot fireworks that are stuck in pneumatic tubes, something that was not used in just ships, but many other locations at the time. There's no connection to the Titanic beyond things like this, which makes me wonder why they even wanted to make a Titanic map if they're not gonna do anything with the setting. Compare the way that the Titanic is used in Voyage to the way that Alcatraz is used in Mob of the Dead. The narrative of Mob is about 4 criminals that are stuck in a cycle that is designed to torture them as a result of their crimes. And the setting of the map being in the unescapable prison Alcatraz is perfect for that type of story. The prison being surrounded by numerous dead bodies hanging everywhere gives the map a haunting atmosphere that complements the story beautifully. Furthermore, the gameplay features of Mob of the Dead derive directly from the narrative. Afterlife, for example, is a great mechanic for progression, but it also shows you how these characters are unable to escape their torture even if they die, as every time they die they are forced to come back to life so that they can constantly relive the cycle again and again. The map even makes references to stories that happened in the real-life Alcatraz. For example, the plane that you built to get to Pack-a-Punch and the plane that the characters used to escape the prison is based on an actual escape attempt that happened in Alcatraz. Mob of the Dead utilizes the concept of Alcatraz masterfully, and it's one of the reasons why it's so beloved. Now, look back at Voyage. The map has no interesting gameplay features that enhances the concept of the Titanic, and the setting, while gorgeous and highly detailed, doesn't complement the story at all. And using the Titanic, a ship that is only associated with tragedy and despair, as the setting for a story that is adventurous and lighthearted is completely counterintuitive. So much of Treyarch's effort went into the look and engineering aspects of the Titanic while completely disregarding why it's such an interesting location in the first place. Sure, the Titanic from an engineering standpoint might have been really impressive at the time, but the only reason most people care about the Titanic is solely because of the tragedy that befell it, which is why people were so excited for this map. They thought that this was going to be the narrative focal point of the map, or at least be used in a way that creates interesting gameplay, but instead they took this aspect of the Titanic that could have been a powerful tool for storytelling and relegated it to a fucking 2D card in the background of the end cutscene. Which just baffles me, man. They could have at least incorporated the sinking of the Titanic while you're doing the boss fight, have the ship go vertical as you're fighting the boss or something like that, but they did nothing. They did nothing with this concept. And that's why, although Voyage isn't a terrible map, it's certainly a massive disappointment. It's easily one of the most disappointing maps in the entire series, and it is truly painful to see a concept that had so much potential be completely wasted. Alright, let's talk about the Easter egg, shall we? I initially thought about talking about every single Easter egg step in detail as I did in some of my previous videos, but then I decided that's really boring, I should not do that. Instead, I'm going to summarize the Easter eggs and only talk about the most notable steps in detail. So, with that out of the way, let's get into Voyage. A lot of people think this is one of the worst Easter eggs of all time, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but I don't think this Easter egg is good either. To explain the problems that I have with this Easter egg, I first want to explain one of my biggest problems with zombies Easter eggs in general. One of my biggest problems with Easter eggs is puzzle steps. Now, generally, a puzzle is a challenge of reasoning and logic. You're given a bunch of random things that you have to connect together somehow to reach a conclusion. The main thing that makes a puzzle fun is figuring out how to complete it. Because if you know exactly how to complete a puzzle right from the get-go, there's nothing to figure out, and therefore there is no challenge. And there are plenty of times in zombies where you're required to complete a puzzle to progress through something. And when you're trying to complete these steps that have puzzles in them, there's no mental challenge while doing them because you already know how to do these puzzles. So now what happens is that these puzzles devolve into arbitrary tasks that you have to do to progress. And since you have a 0% chance of failing them because you already know how to complete them before you begin, there's no enjoyment to get out of them. So it's for the best that these types of puzzles are not too long, otherwise they would be long and boring arbitrary tasks. Which leads me into this Easter egg. Voyage has a couple of these steps. There is the clock step, which is the first step of the Easter egg, and there's the planet step, which is in the middle of the Easter egg. The clock step requires you to find 4 clocks that have symbols corresponding to them. You have to take the minute and hour hand digits of all of these clocks and input them in 8 different dials around the map. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. The puzzle in this step is that there are 8 different dials in the map and you have to connect them somehow. The solution to this puzzle is that there are 4 dials together in this area and each of them has a duplicate dial on the other side of the map. For example, this dial is the only one that has red text, and if you go to the other side of the map, you'll see that exact same dial with red text. The difference is that one of them has an upside down triangle symbol with a scratch in it. This symbol is the clue to how to connect the dials, so you'll go around the map and you'll eventually find the symbol, and the most similar thing to those dials that is near the symbol is a clock. You can connect the dials by taking the minute and hour hand positions of the clock, input the same positions in the dials, and do that with the other set of dials, and you've completed the puzzle. But if you know how this puzzle works from the beginning, the entire step devolves into you running around the map, taking notes of clock positions of all of the dials, and inputting them one by one. Throughout this entire step, there's no challenge, there's no threat, and there's no possibility of failure. And as a result, the step becomes nothing but boring downtime. Also, I want to mention that if you're playing this map on last gen, some of the clocks that you have to find for this step will have trouble rendering. You have to wait for them to render because the clock is completely unreadable otherwise. I remember that I saw this years ago, and it actually motivated me to try playing this game on last gen to see if I can find any other differences between the PC version and the last gen version. It turns out that this is the only difference between the two versions, and I know this because I went out of my way to complete every single Easter egg on last gen. So yeah, that was a waste of time. And also a waste of money because I had to pay for a PlayStation Plus subscription. Anyways, let's talk about the planet step now. For this one, you have to interact with 9 different symbols around the map. You then have to interact with this model of the solar system where the planets will start lighting up one by one in a specific order. When you interact with this model, you'll actually see the planets in the sky when you go outside. The task that you're given is that you have to shoot the planets in the order that you were given earlier. Whenever you shoot one of the planets, a blue orb will land by one of the symbols that you activated earlier. Then you have to go to the orb, pick it up, and do that 8 more times. This one is a bit more challenging because zombies and special enemies will spawn around the orb, but it doesn't really matter when you have a wonder weapon that can completely annihilate them. As for the rest of the steps, they're pretty unnoteworthy. There's a step where you have to kill catalyst zombies by electrical outlets, and then these outlets will turn into lockdown challenges. Each lockdown takes you to a specific location around the map and has you fight a specific catalyst type. These lockdowns are fine, but the thing that annoys me about this step is that you can only get access to 1 lockdown per round. The way that this step works is that each of the outlets will spew one of the elements of the catalysts, and you have to kill the corresponding catalyst by that outlet. However, when you kill a catalyst by one of these outlets, the other ones will just deactivate for some reason. They then won't reactivate until the next round, and then when you kill a catalyst by one of these reactivated outlets, the other ones will deactivate again. So this step takes 3 rounds longer than it has to, which is really stupid. Out of every step in this Easter egg, the only one that I actually like is the last one before the boss fight. There's a challenge in the end where you have to go from the spawn side of the map to the other side within a limited amount of time. The game will block all of the pathways of the map with chunks of ice that you have to destroy with your weapons, and while you're doing this, you also have to be wary of zombies and other special enemies that surround you. This is the only step in this Easter egg that I actually enjoy because it's the only one that is genuinely difficult, but unfortunately it's not good enough to warrant going through the rest of this Easter egg. This, on the other hand, is actually worth going through all of that Easter egg. Voyage of Despair's boss fight against the Eye of Odin is literally the only reason why I'll ever want to play this map again. Not only is this one of the best boss fights in the entire series, but it's also one of my favorite boss fights in gaming as a whole. The fight has 5 phases that take about 15 to 20 minutes to complete. In the first 2 phases, you don't actually fight the boss, but you're required to kill hordes of zombies and special enemies. Even though you're not fighting the boss in these phases, they do serve a very good purpose. In both phases, you have very limited space to move around, especially in the second phase where the game puts you in the engine room. So while you're in these 2 phases, you're getting used to this limited space, which will be helpful in the next 3 phases. The third phase takes place in the staterooms, and this is where you actually start fighting the boss. The boss will occasionally fire an ice beam, and you have to peek from doorways to shoot it as it's firing the beam. Throughout this phase, zombies, catalysts, and stokers will constantly spawn in, and you have to deal with these enemies while you're trying to find an opportunity to damage the boss. Once you do enough damage, the phase will end, and then you're taken to the 4th phase. The way this phase works is similar to the previous phase, except this time you're in a more open area, and zombies spawn more frequently, which makes this phase much harder than the last one. The final phase is the most intense one, as in this phase, the boss gets a new attack. Once you do a certain amount of damage, the boss will start charging up an attack that will instantly kill you. You have to do as much damage as possible to quickly stop the boss from charging this attack. Now, if you have the rocket launcher of the game, the Helion Salvo, then you can very easily cheese this, but if you're using anything else, trying to shut down this attack while being surrounded by zombies is really difficult. Actually, while we're on this topic, I want to talk about a massive misconception concerning this boss fight. A lot of people think that the Helion Salvo is the only weapon in the game that can beat this boss fight, and that's just not true. It's certainly the best weapon against the boss, but there is a lot of other weapons that you can use. But anyways, once you shut down this instant kill attack 3 times, you beat the boss fight. So yeah, this fight is great. It's absolutely worth going through the entire Easter egg just to do this boss fight. As a matter of fact, I actually beat this Easter egg 10 times before making this video, and the only reason I beat the Easter egg that many times is because I just genuinely enjoy playing this boss fight. It's an incredible test of patience, precision, and timing, and even after beating this boss fight as many times as I have, it's still a difficult boss fight, and that's a good thing because it makes this boss fight a lot more replayable. Voyage of Despair isn't a completely atrocious map, but it is a painful waste of potential. The Titanic, which could have been an incredible concept for a cinematic zombies map, is unfortunately more of a hindrance than a positive, as it creates a terrible map layout that is annoying to learn and annoying to navigate. And the fact that almost nothing in the map has anything to do with the Titanic is bewildering. The Wonder Weapon has an interesting concept, but is underwhelming in execution, and the map doesn't offer much beyond the regular high rounds. The side Easter eggs in this map provide mostly useless rewards, and besides the incredible boss fight, the Easter egg isn't that fun to do. Voyage gave me a pretty terrible impression of what the Chaos maps were going to be like, as I didn't want to get maps with unique concepts if they were going to do nothing with them. But thankfully, this game had another launch map that gave me more faith in future Chaos maps. So, Voyage was a pretty shaky start to Chaos, but thankfully it was not the only Chaos map at launch. Unlike Voyage, which was hated by the majority, 9 was loved immensely by most. It was easily the most played map in all of Black Ops 4. 9 is generally considered to be the best map in this game, and although I personally don't think that is the case, not even close, I do think that 9 is one of the best launch maps we've ever had, and it was the sole reason that this game managed to survive as long as it did. Let's begin with what I believe to be 9's best aspect by far: presentation. In most zombies maps, the zombies outbreak is generally treated as apocalyptic. There's little to no survivors beyond the playable cast, and the areas that you play in have this abandoned feel to them. 9, on the other hand, completely disregards this tradition and treats the zombies outbreak as theatrical. In 9, your fight for survival is a show for thousands of spectators in a Roman Colosseum, and Treyarch seriously goes the extra mile with this setting. The massive massive crowd that surrounds you, constantly cheers for you depending on your performance. There's drummers surrounding the area for extra entertainment, and there's even a guy giving commentary to the crowd like it's a fucking WWE match. Now, there is the potential problem of the map going too overboard with the concept and making it feel like a friendly exhibition as opposed for a fight for survival, but what alleviates that completely in 9 is how all of the spectators are cultists. Because cultists are generally into some demonic shit, it makes the show that they're watching feel more tense atmospherically, especially when each one of them is wearing the exact same attire and all of them look the same. It reminds me of the Druid Arena from SmackDown vs. Raw, where every single one in the crowd is wearing the exact same thing. It honestly gives this map an ominous atmosphere that I absolutely love. This on its own is already great, but 9 goes even further with the atmosphere by providing multiple different atmospheric elements. Surrounding the area is 4 temples, and each are dedicated to a different mythological god. There is the Temple of Danu, which has an overgrown aesthetic and has a massive tree as a centerpiece. The Temple of Ra, which is decorated with hieroglyphs and has many ancient Egyptian artifacts. The Temple of Zeus, which is decorated with Greek sculptures and is made entirely off of clean marble. And finally, there's the Temple of Odin, which has a Viking aesthetic and is filled with weapons, armor, and shields. Each of the temples have a basement level, and all of them are connected with underground catacombs. And within the center of these catacombs, there is a 5th temple that I believe is dedicated to whatever those masked spectators believe in. Like the Colosseum, the presentation of these areas is also fantastic. Each of the 4 temples combine characteristics of the god that it's dedicated to and the architecture of the countries and time periods that the god is related to. All of these environments are drastically different, and the fact that they managed to blend them together without making it jarring is honestly very impressive. Additionally, in front of each temple there is a banner that you can slice to start a sequence of challenges. There are 9 of these challenges in total, and all of them give you the exact same reward every single game. The most substantial one of these, by far, is the Pack-a-Punched Strife that you get out of the 3rd challenge. The reason why this reward is so substantial is because of how early you can get it. The first 3 challenges are always very easy and can be done as early as round 2. Being able to get a Pack-a-Punched weapon this early makes the setup process substantially easier, which leads me into 9's other great strength: how beginner-friendly it is. 9's layout is small and very simple to understand, which makes navigating the map very easy. The map's symmetrical design, as well as the temples being all designed in the same way, makes it so that whenever you go to one of the temples, you'll get an idea of what you can find in the other temples. And finally, all of the map's essential resources are placed in very distinct locations, which are easy to remember. For example, each of the 4 perks are placed on top of each of the 4 temples. And since each of the perk machines are named after the 4 gods present in this map, you can find the perk that you want in its respective temple. As for the Pack-a-Punch process, that also is very simple. In each of the 4 temples, there is a gong that you can interact with, which will summon that temple's champion. Once you kill all of the 4 champions, you can access Pack-a-Punch in the temple underground. Not only is this process very simple, but it's also the map's way of introducing the map's new special enemies. So, let's talk about them. The map's new special enemies are the zombie tigers, the brawlers, and the gladiators. The tigers are enemies that are very similar to hellhounds, but have an additional pounce attack that will take off half of your health. The brawlers are lightly armored zombies that have the ability to jump towards you and hit you with a barrage of melee attacks, and the gladiators are fully armored zombies that have the ability to throw boomerang axes. Each of these enemies are introduced in their own dedicated encounter in the temples. This alongside an additional encounter where the gladiator and brawler will spawn in at once. Other than these encounters, you'll see these enemy types in max ammo rounds as well as regular rounds where they appear occasionally alongside the Catalysts and the Blightfather, who return from Voyage of Despair. You might think that the game will get overwhelming with all of these enemy types spawning in at once, but all of them can be avoided by constantly moving. And since all of their attacks are telegraphed really well, you can easily know when to avoid them. What also helps is that despite the map's small size, many of its areas are spacious enough to move around in freely, so the map doesn't run into the same problem that Voyage of Despair does. Another thing that also really helps is this map's crowd appeal mechanic. One of the map's unique features allows you to win the crowd's favor. If you put on a good enough performance for the crowd, they will actually reward you with a drop every single round. You can get drops like insta-kills, double points, and carpenters, but one of the most useful drops that you can get, especially in the early rounds, is fire sales. Not only can you get this drop early, but you can also get it multiple rounds in a row. And obviously being able to constantly hit the box while spending a negligible amount of points is huge. And it also allows players who are new to the game to experiment with multiple different weapons. As a first-time player, this map is a godsend compared to Voyage, and even when you compare it to the other maps in this game, 9 is easily the most casual friendly map in Black Ops 4. 9's ease of access makes it the perfect learning ground for new players, and it's also great for reacquainting experienced players with the mode. Now, with that said, this map is not perfect. One of the biggest issues that I have with this map is its unique weapons. 9 has 2 of these, and unfortunately, both of them are very problematic. First is the Brazen Bull Shield, a shield that comes with a blade that you can slash zombies with, and you can insert that blade to turn it into a gun. Killing zombies with the slash attack will cause your blade to turn on fire and in turn do more damage as a result. The ignited blade is strong against zombies, but it is especially strong against the special enemies in this map. The problem with the slash attack though is while you're swinging the blade, zombies will constantly hit your shield. So excessively using it in this manner will cause your shield to break very quickly. As for the shield gun, the damage of it is comparable to the ballistic shield in Voyage. But unlike the shield gun in Voyage, which is fully automatic, this shield is a 30-round burst. While you're in burst fire, your movement and sensitivity is also slowed down. Because of the slowed down sensitivity, you can't shoot zombies as accurately as you'd like, and because of how long the burst is, zombies can catch up to you because of your slowed down movement. Because of these problems, this weapon basically has no versatility. The slash attack is pretty much useless, especially in the later rounds when it does less damage, and the shield gun can only be used safely when you have a full train and you're far away from them. But having a bad shield doesn't really matter, because for the most part it's there to defend your back. But the same cannot be said for the map's main wonder weapon, the Death of Orion. This is a living scorpion that shoots bolts of electricity, and this bolt of electricity can be charged, which will ensnare zombies. And any enemy that gets close to this ensnared zombie will also be ensnared as well. While they are in this state, zombies will slowly start taking damage until they die. And I mean very slowly. The weapon can kill multiple zombies with a single charge shot, but it can take upwards of 15 seconds for it to do so. In Call of Duty Zombies time, that is a fucking eternity. When you're using this thing and you have these constant periods of downtime, it starts to add up very quickly, and it turns this wave-based survival game into waiting simulator. Granted, you are able to kill zombies with other weapons while they are ensnared, but at that point the weapon becomes a support wonder weapon than an actual wonder weapon. And as we know from Call of the Dead, support wonder weapons are not the most fun thing to use. But at least in that map, the VR-11 was not the only wonder weapon that you can use. You also had the scavenger, but unfortunately there is no scavenger equivalent in 9. It's such a shame that these two weapons suck as much as they do, especially considering the concept of this map. They could have thought of something way cooler. Like, for example, why not expand upon the crowd appeal mechanic of this map and make it so that you can get the wonder weapons from that? What if, for example, the commentator wants to hype up the crowd even further, so he throws weapons from previous challengers to make the show more exciting? These weapons can be inspired by the mythologies that are in this map, or can even be inspired by the special enemies. You know, for example, use the gladiator's boomerang axe, or use a sword that is laced with poison, something like that. Or you can do something similar to Dark Souls, where if you kill these special enemies, you can actually pick up their weapons from their body. I feel like these ideas would especially fit with this type of map. At least it would be a much better idea than having what is essentially a glorified stun gun, which leads me to another problem that I have with this map that is indirectly caused by this wonder weapon, and that problem is the special enemies. A lot of people have a problem with the frequency of special enemies in this map. Because many of these enemies have armor or increased health, the rounds take much longer than they should, especially when the ice catalysts spawn in, because those increase regular zombies' health, which makes the round take even longer. I, on the other hand, think that they're actually really well balanced, and the problem isn't them, it's it's that the map doesn't provide the means for you to take them out quickly. The reason I say that is because these special enemies work really well when you're using your specialist weapon. While you're using the specialist, these enemies die way faster than when you're using the wonder weapon or any of the other regular weapons, and as a result, they are a lot more fun to fight. But since that can only be used temporarily, you are forced to deal with large amounts of enemies that have much higher health than they should have, and it makes going through the rounds really tedious. But if you're able to get past these issues, or you just don't have any problems with them, you'll definitely enjoy this map. There's plenty of areas to train in this map, all in different environments and spaces, which accommodates multiple players. The challenge system will keep you occupied for the first 20-ish rounds, and although the rewards are the same every game, the challenges are random, which adds replayability to the map. There's a side quest to upgrade the shield, and although the shield sucks, the upgrade process is actually really fun to do. To upgrade the shield, you have to collect 3 invisible parts, and each of them will appear after doing a challenge. The first part requires you to shoot bull symbols in the Zeus temple. The second part requires you to ignite your shield blade 4 times, with each ignition being a result of a special enemy kill, and the last part requires you to kill all of the unique special enemies in this map with an ignited blade. Out of these 3 parts, the only one that is actually difficult to get is the second part. This is because you can very easily hit a zombie or a special enemy that you've already killed by accident, but beyond that one potential problem, this challenge is still very doable. Once the shield has been upgraded, its durability will increase. Oh, and also when you ignite your blade with the upgraded shield, it will be ignited with green fire, which is just so fucking cool. Why are you so shit? Why couldn't you have been a better weapon? Sorry, I just had to get that out of my system because I'm so pissed. It's so cool, it sucks and shit. Another thing you can do on this map is the free perk side Easter egg. This is one of only 2 maps in this game where you can get more than 1 free perk. You can get the first free perk from challenges, and the other free perk is done by a side quest. By collecting 3 parts, putting these parts by this skeleton in the Odin temple, going to the Zeus temple and throwing a wraith fire from there, and waiting for 7 rounds, why? You can get another free perk. I actually like how this requires you to line up your throw from another part of the map, but that 7-round wait step is really stupid. It's a deliberate waste of time. So yeah, there is a couple of things that you can do on this map. I mean, there isn't that much to do, but for a map like this that is meant for newcomers and casual play, it's definitely sufficient enough. So how's the Easter egg in this map? The concept of this Easter egg is that you have to appease the 4 gods in the map. For each god there is a puzzle step and an action step that you have to complete. Once you complete the 8 steps, you can access the map's boss fight. This is one of the very few Easter eggs in zombies that heavily commits to a certain concept. With a lot of Easter eggs, it feels like you're doing a bunch of random tasks that have no cohesion with each other, and there's only a handful of maps that actually commit to a concept. One example that comes to mind is Origins. The concept of that map's Easter egg is heavily based on the 8 steps of freedom from the campaign mission Vorkuta in Black Ops 1. So it's cool that 9 has its own unique concept that it commits to. But despite that, this Easter egg, just like Voyage, is not good. The steps leading up to the boss fight are not as bad as Voyage. There's definitely a lot more highlights in this Easter egg than in Voyage. But as I'll talk about in a bit, the boss fight isn't as good as Voyage, and some of the steps in this Easter egg are still kind of annoying. My annoyance with this Easter egg mostly comes from the puzzle steps. There's 2 in particular that I really hate, and that's the Danu puzzle and the Zeus puzzle. For Danu, you have to make a fertilizer, and this fertilizer is made out of bone powder, a burnt wooden stake, and literal shit. Very nutritious indeed. There's nothing difficult about getting these parts. The annoying part of this is that you have to mix them. In order to mix them, you have to put these parts in certain locations in order, and every time you do this, you have to wait a couple of rounds. You have to take the wooden stake and put it on top of a cauldron, then wait a few rounds. Afterwards, you take the wooden stake and the rest of the parts and put them in this bowl here, and you have to wait another couple rounds. And then you take the fertilizer and put it in the Danu temple, and then you have have to wait another couple rounds, and then from there you can access the challenge. Additionally, you can't get the wooden stake, which is the first step of this process, until you get to at least round 10. So basically, you can't start this Easter egg until you get to round 10, and because of all the waiting that you have to do, you can't actually complete the first step until minimum round 17. As for the Zeus puzzle, it's definitely not as bad as the Danu one, but it's still another round burner. To complete this step, you have to charge 4 electrical rods in spawn. To charge these rods, you have to kill gladiators and brawlers by them. Each rod requires 2 kills from one of the 2 or a combination of the 2 special enemies, and since those don't spawn in that often, this step also takes a few rounds. The other 2 puzzles are nothing noteworthy. For the Ra puzzle, you have to shoot 4 symbols with your shield, and for the Odin puzzle, you have to shoot 3 symbols with the Death of Orion in a very specific way. The action steps of this Easter egg, on the other hand, are actually pretty good. Each one of them provides a unique challenge. For Danu, you have to destroy spores while being surrounded by zombies. For Ra, you have to kill special enemies in a specific order. For Zeus, you have to kill dozens of special enemies while having a specialist that doesn't run out. And the Odin challenge is a wave defense. Out of these 4, the only one that I actually have a problem with is the last one, which is the Odin challenge. In this wave defense, the zombie spawns are just way too slow. This step can be intense at times, but for the most part, you're only dealing with a few zombies at a time. What this step should have done instead is constantly surround you by zombies to be all-out intensity like the Zeus challenge, but regardless, it's not a terrible step.
So it is over, right? I should very much like to wake up and get drunk now.
I don't think there is a single thing in the English lexicon that can describe how fucking badass the pixels on the screen are right now. In my opinion, this boss fight has better presentation and sense of scale than any other boss fight in the series. It probably has something to do with how in this you're fighting against an actual real animal, as opposed to fighting something completely supernatural. It feels more tangible because of that. And the thing is, the presentation of this map was already fantastic. This just takes it to a whole new level. I love the arena, I love the announcer, I love the fact that you fight 2 fucking mammoths. I love everything about this boss fight, except the gameplay. And it really hurts saying that because the presentation here is 10 out of 10, and the gameplay is like 4 out of 10. The problem with this boss fight is that it is so easy that it's genuinely impossible to fail it unless you've never done it before and you're going in blind. The elephant's main attack is that they'll charge at you and try to stomp you. Their movement is very linear, so you can easily avoid their attacks, and the other attacks are projectiles that are very easy to avoid because of how massive the arena is. So the entire fight is you training the elephant and the zombies and periodically shooting the elephant until it dies. The other elephant that you fight after this one is also pretty much the exact same thing. It also doesn't help that most weapons in this game can melt the elephant's health. I wish I can say that the amazing spectacle makes up for it, but the more that you do this quest, the boring gameplay of the fight becomes harder and harder to ignore, and it really fucking hurts saying that, because this boss fight would probably be my favorite in the series if it was actually difficult. 9 is everything that you want out of a good launch map. It's accessible for first-time players, takes no time to learn and get used to, and offers a great casual experience of zombies. The Easter egg, on the other hand, is very inconsistent, and while the boss fight is a great visual, it could have used a difficulty increase. The weapons of the map also leave a lot to be desired, and I wish they were more interesting and fun to use. That said, 9 is a map that I do like, and this is the map that you want to launch with. In my opinion, every zombies game must have a launch map where its purpose is to introduce players to the basics of zombies in an unoppressive environment, and in that regard, 9 is completely flawless. Blood of the Dead, the map that had more hype than any other zombies map before it or after it, and that will likely be the case for the foreseeable future. From the very moment that this map was revealed in the community event, most people were ecstatic, and even people who weren't as interested in the map like myself were still anticipating this map. However, when the map released and people finally got to play it, the ones that were the most excited were the ones that were the most disappointed. So disappointed, in fact, that they think that it's one of the worst Call of Duty Zombies maps. But why though? What led to such disappointment? To answer that question, we need to first discuss why the map had so much hype to begin with. Blood of the Dead is a remake of the Black Ops 2 Zombies map, Mob of the Dead, a map that many consider to be one of the best maps ever made, even to this day. Mob of the Dead was the foundation of the quest-style map design format that other fan-favorite maps like Origins and Shadows of Evil implemented. It was innovative, well-designed, had some of the most beloved wonder weapons in the series, and excelled in storytelling and atmosphere. The map was so good that it pretty much instantly repaired Black Ops 2's reputation, which at the time wasn't the best. That was because the most recent map at that time was Die Rise, and that map had the opposite reputation to Mob of the Dead. While Mob was considered one of the best maps of all time, Die Rise was considered one of the worst maps of all time. So to say that Mob of the Dead saved Black Ops 2's reputation was a massive understatement. However, that alone wasn't the reason why people were so hyped for Blood of the Dead. One of the main reasons why people were so hyped for this map was because people wanted a Mob remaster since Black Ops 3. You might think that it's weird that people wanted a remaster for a map that wasn't even 5 years old, and in the next sequel of the franchise no less. But in Black Ops 3, something very unexpected happened at the end of its life cycle. Zombies Chronicles. This was a DLC that had 8 remastered maps, and one of these maps was also in Black Ops 2 and was also considered to be one of the best maps ever made, and that map was Origins. So many people were wondering, if that map got a remaster, why didn't Mob of the Dead get a remaster? And when people found out that this map was coming back in Black Ops 4, well, again, the amount of hype that this map had was insurmountable. So when Black Ops 4 came out, this was the first map that many people wanted to try out first, and they got to see what was changed with Blood of the Dead. So let's go over these changes, starting with the layout. Blood of the Dead added a few new areas that you can now access, one of which is now the new spawn room. This area, alongside 2 other buildings that surround it, is set in a space that is far away from the original Mob prison. What connects this area to the prison is a very long and narrow catwalk. This catwalk serves a cinematic purpose that I will go over shortly, but most of the time, its only purpose is to connect these 2 areas. As for the prison, it's pretty much the same for the most part. The only notable difference is that the roof of the prison in this map is smaller than the one in Mob of the Dead. Another area that was added was the Warden's house. You'll find this outside of the Warden's office, and it pretty much only exists for the Easter egg and some side Easter egg steps. One area that was removed though was the Golden Gate Bridge. In the original Mob of the Dead, this was the area that had Pack-a-Punch, and it was accessed by making a plane on top of the roof and using that plane to travel to the bridge. This was the main cinematic part in Mob of the Dead, and in Blood it was completely removed and Pack-a-Punch was then moved to the prison. What replaced the plane as the cinematic part of Blood of the Dead is the catwalk sequence. When you first open the door to the catwalk, zombies will start spawning constantly in front of you, and you have to go through dozens of them to reach the prison on the other side. Once you reach the end, you'll be met with the original Mob of the Dead spawn room for a good dose of nostalgia. I like how the sequence tries to go for something different to the plane sequence in Mob, and it's definitely very intense when you first start playing the game. The problem with this is that unlike the bridge on Mob, which was outside of the map, the catwalk and the spawn room is an extension of the map. As a result of this, the map is now much bigger than before, and going from the spawn room to any of the areas that are far away from it, like the Warden's house, or God forbid, the docks, takes forever. Now, Generally, you don't have to do this enough for it to become a massive issue, but if you're doing the side Easter eggs, or especially the main Easter egg, this extension to the layout becomes a problem. But that's a topic that I will discuss later. For now, let's talk about how the progression of the map has changed from Mob of the Dead. The biggest change in this regard is the removal of Afterlife. Afterlife was a feature that essentially allowed you to turn into an electrical ghost. You can access this form by shocking yourself with a red electrical box or by downing. Afterlife was the main method of progression in Mob of the Dead, as it allowed you to power up perks, open specific doors, and get access to utilities. This feature has been reworked into the map's new shield, the Spectral Shield. This shield allows you to take the souls of zombies, and when you get enough souls, you'll be able to shoot a shield blast. With this blast, you can kill zombies and power up electrical panels. For the most part, the shield is pretty much only used for the Easter egg, but you do need it to unlock Pack-a-Punch. Speaking of which, progression on this map is a lot simpler than in Mob. For most of the early game in Mob of the Dead, you are constantly going into Afterlife to either open up areas of the map, to get perks, or to get the plane parts. In Blood of the Dead though, that has been simplified to get 2 power switches, get the shield, and shield blast this area of the map, and now you have Pack-a-Punch. Because of how simple this process has become, and because of how many points you get from the catwalk sequence, you can get this map entirely opened up by around 3. It's a lot more fast-paced than Mob, where that map takes a lot longer for you to get to Pack-a-Punch. I commend the map for trying something completely different with this map, other than copying Mob of the Dead in its entirety. The problem is though, this approach, in my opinion at least, is not an improvement. Afterlife was one of the coolest and most unique parts about Mob of the Dead. It added a very interesting layer of depth and planning to the progression of Mob of the Dead. You had to plan out exactly when to use Afterlife and how much do you want to do with the short time that you had with it. Do you want to play it safe and activate a few parts of the map, or do you want to activate as much as you can with the risk of dying completely? Plus, being able to turn into an electrical ghost, glide all over the place, and access areas of the map that you can't normally was just cool. Turning that very complex and unique mechanic into the Spectral Shield is just boring. Collecting souls using the shield is slow and laborious, and sure, you don't need to use it that often unless you're doing the Easter egg, but it still replaced one of the most fun aspects about Mob of the Dead. Granted, the Spectral Shield is very powerful, but it's not like this map doesn't have any other powerful tools. The Wonder Weapon, the Specialist, the equipment, hell, even some of the regular weapons are very strong in this game, and all of these don't require you to deliberately go out of your way to charge them just to use them. Speaking of which, let's talk about the map's wonder weapons. Every wonder weapon from Mob of the Dead, as well as their upgrade variants, return to this map. The main wonder weapon is the Blundergat, a single barrel shotgun that can vaporize multiple zombies, and when upgraded turns into a double barrel shotgun. The Blundergat can additionally be upgraded into the Acid Gat. The Acid Gat shoots 3 green capsules that will explode after a few seconds. If the Acid Gat is Pack-a-Punch, these capsules will also have the additional ability of distracting zombies. Another weapon that returns is the Hell's Retriever, a tomahawk that when thrown will follow and hit multiple zombies at once. The weapon can be used infinitely, but there is a cooldown with every throw. The Hell's Retriever can be upgraded into the Hell's Redeemer by doing a side quest, and doing so will give you a version of the weapon that has infinite damage. Finally, there is this Spoon, a melee weapon that can kill zombies with 1 stab until the early teens, and can be upgraded into the Golden Spork, which can kill zombies with 1 stab until the early 30s. These weapons perform very similarly to their Black Ops 2 counterparts, however, the way that you get all of these weapons has been changed. Some of them are very minor changes, and some of them are major changes. For the Hell's Retriever, the Blundergat, and the Acid Gat, the process for acquiring them is the same. The difference is that the locations related to the acquiring process of all of them have been somewhat changed. As for the Redeemer, the Spoon, and the Golden Spork, the process to acquiring this stuff has been changed drastically. For example, to get the Hell's Redeemer, you had to go to the bridge and survive an entire round just using the Hell's Retriever. Afterwards, you'd go back to the prison, discard your Retriever by throwing it into lava, and from there you can get the Hell's Redeemer in the next round by going into Afterlife. To get the Redeemer in Black Ops 4 though, you have to go to this part of the map and get a couple dozen kills, then find a blue dog symbol with your shield, throw your Retriever at it to discard your Retriever, then wait for a dog round where you have to shield blast a ghost dog that can spawn anywhere on the map, and from there you can get your Redeemer. As for new and unique weapons, there aren't any. There's only new variants of existing weapons in this map. There's the Magmagat, as well as 2 additional upgrades to the Golden Spork. The Magmagat shoots molten lava that can distract and burn zombies, and when you pack-a-punch it, it will give you 2 shots instead of 1. And unlike the Vitrolic Withering, which is mainly used to distract zombies, the Magmagat can kill zombies indefinitely, making it easily the best of the Blundergat variants. And for the 2 new melee upgrades, there's the Golden Shank and the Golden Spork Knife. The Golden Shank, which allows you to kill zombies with 1 stab indefinitely, and the Golden Spork Knife is the same thing, but it additionally has the ability to one-shot Brutus. As for how to get these weapons, the Magmagat is acquired by putting the regular Blundergat in the fireplace of the Warden's house and kill zombies to charge it. Once it's charged, you can then take it from the house all the way to spawn, where you can put it in this compactor, and afterwards, you can get the weapon. As for the Golden Shank, you first need to get 100 kills with the Spork. Afterwards, you have to get 4 gems, one of which requires the Hell's Redeemer, and the others require 100 trap kills each. I know when you put it like that, it sounds insane, but it really isn't that difficult. You can passively get these kills as you're progressing through the game. However, getting 100 knife kills and 300 trap kills does take a while. As for how to get the Spork Knife, you have to first get the Shank, then discard it, and then kill Brutus with the non-upgraded knife. I mean, personally, I don't think a melee weapon is worth that much effort, but it's there for anyone that wants it. And pretty much, that is all of the changes that this map did to Mob. To give a summary of Blood of the Dead, this map is a simpler and bigger version of Mob that has more tools. All of Mob's weapons and their variants come back to Blood of the Dead with the addition of new variants of these weapons, and because of how the layout was expanded, the map now has more areas to train and camp in. When the map is described in this manner, it makes you wonder why it was so hated. Sure, the map does have flaws. It's way too big, and some of the steps for getting these weapons are kind of obnoxious. But to me, these flaws aren't bad enough to consider the map one of the worst in the entire series. So if the map isn't as bad as these other maps, then where did all the hate come from? Blood of the Dead suffers a problem that is very rare for zombies maps, and that is that the map's expectations were just too high. People genuinely thought that Blood of the Dead would improve the Mob of the Dead map exponentially, and when people got a map that marginally improved some aspects of the original map, people were severely disappointed. If anything, some of the changes made the map much worse. Some examples of which include the layout being too big, Afterlife being reworked into the Spectral Shield, the Pack-a-Punch moving locations for no reason, the process for getting the old weapons is now more tedious, and while you can discuss the severity of these changes, the undeniable fact is that this map did not improve Mob in a very significant way. If Blood of the Dead was not a remake of Mob of the Dead and it was a fully original map, it wouldn't be looked at with this much scrutiny. Because Blood of the Dead is certainly not a terrible map, it offers way too much to be considered a terrible map. But people don't look at Blood of the Dead as its own original map. People look at it as the remake of Mob of the Dead, and in regards of it being an improvement of Mob of the Dead, this map does not even come close. So, how's this map's Easter egg? This is easily one of the most despised Easter eggs in all of Zombies. It might even be the most despised one. But over the years, there has been this group of people that is constantly getting bigger that really love this Easter egg and consider it one of the best Easter eggs in Zombies. However, this group of people still falls in the minority, as most people still hate this Easter egg, myself included. For me personally, Blood of the Dead's Easter egg is one of the longest and most boring wastes of time in Zombies. To give you a slight idea of what this Easter egg is like, let's talk about the very first step. The first thing you have to do in this Easter egg is break through this wall in the Warden's house. So, how do you do it? Do you use one of the Blundergat variants? Do you use an explosive weapon? Do you use the Hell's Retriever as a hatchet and just break through it? No. Instead, you have to get the shield and the Hell's Retriever, then look at this code in the Warden's office, input this code in the spiraling staircase, then go to the docks and throw your Retriever at this net to get a spoon. After that, you have to go back to the Warden's house and go to that wall and scratch it with your spoon. After that, you have to get monkey bombs either by hitting the box or doing a side quest, the latter of which requires you to get your specialist to level 2 and kill zombies in this area. From there, you go back to the spawn room to get the bomb, then go all the way back to the spiraling staircase to input a code to spawn Brutus, then go back to the warden's house where you can throw a monkey bomb at the wall and Brutus will kill himself to break through it. This is step 1. The game forces you to do all of that shit that requires a lot of running around this big ass map just to break through a fucking American drywall. These things are so pitifully weak that you can punch through them and break them. Why is it necessary to do all of this? But real world logic aside, this step is bad. It forces you to get the shield, a melee weapon, and 2 wonder weapons just to break a wall. But worry not, fellas, as the next step is significantly worse. The next step is easily the most infamous step in this Easter egg for good reason, and that's the bird step. To complete the step, you have to find a ghost bird and shield blast it. Then wait around, do it again in another location, then wait another round, do it in another location, then wait another round, and then go to the number pad in the spiraling staircase, get a zombie blood, find the bird, and throw a retriever at it. This bird is only visible if you look through your shield, and the way that you find it is by listening to it while looking through your shield.
There you are, thief!
And across this gigantic map, it has over 40 locations. Granted, the bird is restricted to some locations when you have to find it the first and fourth time, but for the second and third time that you have to find this bird, it can essentially spawn anywhere on the map. This is easily one of the most tedious steps in all of Zombies. This step offers no gameplay value whatsoever, and it's such a blatant waste of time that its mere existence fucking annoys me. And look, I know I'm sounding redundant with me repeating this, but I want to reiterate, this map is huge, and this map only has 3 fast travels, and only one of them is consistently useful. As for the other 2, one of them is completely useless, and the other one is only useful when it's near to you. If it's on the other side, you have to wait for it to come to you. So when the game is constantly forcing me to go from one side of the map to the other within just the first 2 steps, it's obviously going to be annoying. And by the way, if any of you want to mention that you can find the bird much easier using this method where you go on top where the gondola is and look at the docks and you can see the trail of the bird to tell you its exact location, don't worry, I already know about that. I am criticizing this step. Despite that, don't get me wrong, it's far more favorable to go to one part of the map where there's a couple locations to look for as opposed to inspecting every nook and cranny through the shield as if the entire map is a fucking crime scene. However, running around the map while doing nothing noteworthy and wasting 4 rounds worth of time is not good either, especially when the bird goes to a far enough location, like for example spawn, where there's a lot more locations to look for because it's harder to tell where exactly it is. Once you're done with this god-awful step, you can now move into the Blood of the Dead challenges. The way that this step works is similar to the trophy challenges in Gorod Krovi. One of the 5 challenges will be activated randomly, and once you complete them, you can move into the 4 challenges, and so on. The challenges in Blood of the Dead truly consist of riveting stuff, such as brute forcing Morse code, escorting a ghost while killing zombies, follow a ghost with your shield, wait for a ghost in this location so that you can kill it with a trap. That's 3 of the 5 challenges, by the way. Now look, some of the trophy challenges in Gorod Krovi are also not that cool. Like, the Gurst challenge and the Mangler challenge aren't that cool, but the difference between the 2 maps in this case is that in Gorod, in order to activate a challenge, all you have to do is press a button. In Blood, though, you have to actually spend time activating the challenge for some fucking reason. In order to activate a challenge, you have to go to the warden's house to get a code. Then you have to input that code in the spiraling staircase. Then you have to find the orb that can spawn in one of 5 different locations, and the location of the orb indicates what challenge it will be. And in what I can only describe as a pure evil design choice, 2 of these orbs are all the way back at spawn. And the power oh my god, the power challenge, dude. That one is actually demonic. So in order to do this step, you have to play a game of Simon Says to get 3 symbols. From there you have to translate these symbols and then go to the powerhouse where you're going to find a ghost. You have to force this ghost to turn on 3 switches that are near the 3 symbols that you found earlier. And after that, the step is done. It's not difficult, right? You might be wondering, well, what's the problem with it? The problem is that the panel used to input the code is near the docks, and the orb that is used to start the challenge is in spawn, and the Simon Says portion is all the way back in the docks, and the ghost portion is all the way back at spawn. In other words, you have to cross this massive fucking map 3 times. Now, look, don't be distracted by this particular case because it's not the only one. The other cases are definitely not as bad as this one, but they're not good either. The orb to activate the challenge where you have to follow a ghost with your shield is also all the way back at spawn. And to spawn in the ghost that you need to start this challenge requires you to go to the original Mob of the Dead spawn. And you have to follow this ghost that wanders around a portion of the prison and then goes from the prison to the catwalk into the new industries area near spawn, and it does so at an abysmally slow pace. The orb for activating the challenge where you have to do the Morse code is thankfully in the docks, so it's not that far away, but the Morse code portion is in the warden's office, and the ghost that you have to escort is all the way up in the infirmary. While you can use the gondola, it still moves at an abysmally slow pace. None of these steps are fun to do because you spend a massive portion of them doing nothing. And as for the other 2 challenges that you have to do, they have the opposite problem. Both of these challenges last less than a minute, which is minuscule compared to everything else that you have to do in this Easter egg. And because of that, it's hard to get any enjoyment out of these 2 steps when everything else overshadows them. Plus, any of the challenges that would have been potentially difficult, like the one where you have to escort a ghost while killing zombies, is trivialized by the Magma Gat. And that's something that I want to talk about, by the way. This Easter egg is not even difficult. The difficult part of this Easter egg is knowing how to manage your shield, which is used in every single step. You need the shield to activate the challenges or spawn in the ghosts or forcing the ghost to do a certain action. So throughout this Easter egg, you have to constantly fill up your shield so that you can use shield blasts for these steps, and you have to make sure that your shield never breaks throughout this Easter egg because if it breaks, any shield blasts that you have will be gone. The only 2 ways to get shield blasts is by killing zombies or going to one of the shock boxes around the map and interacting with it if it has a spark in it. You cannot get any shield blasts in any other ways, not even through max ammos. So if you don't know what you're doing and you're constantly breaking the shield, then yeah, this Easter egg can be difficult. But if you know how to manage your shield, all difficulty from this Easter egg pretty much goes away. And since there's no longer any challenge with this Easter egg, you don't even get the sense of satisfaction from completing a difficult challenge after you beat it. Instead, it turns into a long list of arbitrary tasks that you have to do, and that's why I call this Easter egg a complete waste of time. What better way to cap off a terrible Easter egg than with a terrible boss fight? Saying that this boss fight is terrible is a massive understatement. This thing is actually offensive. This entire boss fight is you killing the mini-boss 12 times and shooting orbs. That's literally it. How they managed to make a boss fight that is somehow worse than the Shadow Man boss fight in Shadows of Evil is beyond me. At least the Shadow Man boss fight ends instantly. This, on the other hand, lasts as long as a proper boss fight when it's nothing like a proper boss fight. This Easter egg as a whole sucks, but I wouldn't have minded nearly as much if the boss fight was good like how it was in Voyage of Despair. But the boss fight of this Easter egg is primarily why I hate the Blood of the Dead Easter egg. Having a great boss fight at the end would have made all of that tedium worth it, but since the boss fight of this Easter egg sucks, this Easter egg is never worth doing. Blood of the Dead is a map that I don't resent in the same way that many others do. To be honest, from the very beginning, I thought that this map was going to be worse than Mob of the Dead based on how Origins was treated in its Black Ops 3 remaster. That remaster went out of its way to change aspects of the map that people liked, and I expected that to happen somehow in Blood of the Dead. It turns out that Blood of the Dead wasn't as bad as that, as the map tried something completely new, which is transforming the core gameplay into something far simpler. But to me personally, the core gameplay and progression of Mob of the Dead is why that map is so great to me. And while I don't have an issue with them removing that specifically, my problem is that they didn't replace it with something that was just as good. But despite that though, I do like the gameplay of this map. In fact, it's my personal favorite out of the launch maps that we talked about so far. There's plenty to do in this map, even if some of it is a bit obnoxious, and something that I haven't talked about that I really like about this map is that it's the only one in the entire game without napalm zombies or nova crawlers. That said, the Easter egg is terrible in almost every single way, and the boss fight especially is insultingly bad. But other than that, this map is fun, but is an unfortunate regression of Mob of the Dead. Before we move on to the DLC maps, there is one thing that we have to discuss. One of the core factors of Black Ops 4 Zombies that makes it such a controversial game is its mechanics. In particular, this game's perk system. For most people, it was a very sudden and jarring change to a system that every single person was fine with. It was so jarring, as a matter of fact, that there was a substantial portion of people who stopped playing this game primarily because of the system. And as for me personally, I don't like this system either. I wouldn't go as far as to say that it ruins the entire game, but I think it makes every single map worse in this game. But how? Some of you may ask, how does this system negatively affect the maps of this game? Well, the answer is very simple. They remove Jug. First, why was this system made? In an interview done by YouTuber JohnnyJ25, Jason Blundell, the former co-studio head of Treyarch and essentially the face of Black Ops 4 Zombies, was asked about the perk system.
You know, one of the big decisions was we wanted to have meaningful choices about what you're doing, what you're picking. From the starting weapon, your special equipment, your special weapon. And when we got to perks, we had this problem. And the problem is that everyone gets the same things. And so when we switched it on with all the normal perks, first time. And we just took a survey. We had like a little survey monkey, right? We could look at it. Yeah. And everyone had the same perks. And we kept on adding more and more perks in the early days.
Well, that's how pretty much the only time I ever diverged from the core four is when I maybe got like an On the House or a or like Perkaholic.
Sure. So that's what we said. We said, okay, let's take it out. And as soon as we took out certain perks, suddenly when I looked at the survey, everything started changing. And I was like, this is what we want. And then people then started to have their own strategies. And then they had different strategies on their own than when they were with friends and with certain friends based on how they play. And we're like, that's what we're after.
So essentially, by removing Juggernog and removing some of those beloved perks, you've given more freedom to the player.
Yes.
So the goal with these changes was to turn the perk system into a preference-orientated system and give people the opportunity to use perks that they normally wouldn't be able to due to how strong the original 4 perks were. The idea behind this system is actually pretty good, and I think that in their specific goal of increasing variety, they did succeed. Removing these clutch perks and providing the large perk selection that they did opened up numerous strategies and allowed players to pick plenty of choices that suited their specific playstyle. For example, if you like camping, you can use the perk Stone Cold Stronghold to give you extra health while staying still. If you like using the shield, you can use the perk Victorious Tortoise to increase your defense while holding a shield. You can also pick perks that act as quality of life upgrades, like for example Death Perception, which gives you a better idea of where zombies and special enemies are coming from. Or you can run Time Slip, a perk that increases the recharge rate of fast travels and allows you to hit the box and pack a punch much faster. And if you want to do Easter eggs solo without being constantly harassed by zombies, then using the perk Winter's Wail to stop zombies in their place is a fantastic choice. There's also the modifier slot that provides an extra ability to one of your perks, and this adds another layer of variety. For example, Time Slip on its own is a great quality of life perk, but its modifier allows you to recharge your specialist faster. So now, instead of just being a quality of life perk, it's also an offensive perk. The game has a ton of variety with the system. With 4 choices out of 17 different perks, with one of them being in the modifier slot, the amount of setups that you can do is nearly endless, especially when the game also allows you to pick which perk that you'll encounter first. However, this system has issues, and these issues are so bad that the variety that this system provides is not good enough to make up for it. First, let's talk about what happened to the 4 crutch original perks. Jug has been removed entirely and has been replaced with the default 4-hit system. Double tap has now been built into the Pack-a-Punch machine, where you have to Pack-a-Punch an additional 4 times to get the double damage ability. Speed Cola has now been built into the modifier system and perks, and Quick Revive was not removed, but its solo ability to revive you when you go down has been taken away from it. Instead, all solo players are now given 2 self-revives by default, which can be increased by either a talisman or a side quest in some of the maps. With that in mind, let's go over the first problem. In every match, you spawn in with essentially Jug by default, and in solo you have 2 additional quick revives by default as well. This, alongside a specialist weapon, a powerful piece of equipment, and the ability to spawn into the match with a free wall buy, makes the first few rounds of every match comically easy, to the point that it's nigh impossible to die within the first 10 rounds unless you're new to the game, you're trying to do some Easter egg or side Easter egg step, or you're just not paying attention at all. The problem with this is that most of the maps in this game can be opened up by round 5, and being this strong early completely trivializes the map progression. In previous games, Jug was the first and main goal of every single match because you start out very weak. Your fragility in the beginning of the match made the early rounds tense, especially in very expensive maps like Mob of the Dead. And since you start off with a very weak pistol, you also have to go for a stronger weapon alongside Jug. Because of how important both of these things were, you had to carefully consider how to use your points. For example, let's take a look at Origins from Black Ops 2. Everyone that plays that map knows that the mini-boss of the map, the Panzer, spawns in on round 8. And everyone knows what it's like to fight that guy with just an MP40. While it is possible to kill the Panzer with an MP40 if you've played the map long enough, it is significantly easier to kill him with a much more powerful weapon. So, if you want to guarantee surviving this encounter, you actually have to plan what you'll do throughout these first few rounds. You might want to play it safe and get Jug as early as you can, but that makes it much harder to get a powerful weapon before he spawns in because, again, the map is expensive. For example, you can upgrade the Mauser on round 8, which is one of the best weapons to kill the Panzer with, but in order to do this, you have to turn on every single generator on the map and open the area in the middle, which essentially means that you basically have to open the entire map. Since the map is expensive, it's very unlikely that you'll have enough points to both get Jug and upgrade the Mauser. You can also try hitting the box and see if you can get a powerful weapon from that, but if you get unlucky, you'll waste valuable points. Because of the disadvantage that you're given early on in this map, all of your decisions have much more impact as a result. If this map was in Black Ops 4, all of that nuance goes out of the window because you spawn in with Jug by default and you can just smoke him with your specialist. Because you spawn into the map as fucking Superman, all of the potential planning and meaningful decisions that could have been a part of the early game experience is now completely gone. In literally every single map in this game, you can breeze through the setup process and annihilate everything in your way. And as a direct result of this, it turns what should be one of the most engaging parts of the experience into a complete chore. By the time the zombies actually become a threat, you'll have upgraded weapons, a shield, and most if not all of your perks. But hey, at least by the time that happens, the game's difficulty goes back to the way that old games were, right? Well, that would be the case if it weren't for another problem. When you go down in this game, you're not punished to the same extent that you were punished in previous games. This is because those crutch perks that were removed and then rebuilt into other parts of the game don't go away when you go down. Let's say, for example, that you have these 4 crutch perks in Black Ops 2. When you down in that game, you are given a massive disadvantage. You now reload slower, you do less damage with your bullet weapons, and most importantly, you lose over half of your health. Now you have to get your perks back without making a mistake, because if you do make a mistake, the game will end. And since you're given a sudden disadvantage that you didn't have since the beginning of the game, it's more likely that you'll make that mistake, and it increases the tension by a lot, especially in maps that are huge or maps that are very close quarters. But in Black Ops 4, the disadvantage that you're given in comparison is basically nothing. You still have the same amount of health, you still do the same amount of damage, and if you still have self-revives, you don't have to worry about a game over when you go down again. In fact, in Black Ops 4, you don't even lose all of your perks with a single down. You only lose 2 in solo, and in co-op you only lose 1 and slowly lose the other perks as long as you stay down. Since the disadvantage that you receive when you go down isn't nearly as strong, you have no pressure to get your perks back, and if you want to, you can survive without them for a very long time. This honestly makes the game so much less interesting because it completely kills one of the core parts of the experience. Those moments where you're put in a terrible situation where you have to put your A game to survive are some of my favorite moments that can happen while playing zombies, and this almost never happens in this game. It's because perks in this game aren't as necessary for survival as they used to be, so much so that, again, you can survive for a very long time without buying a single perk. To put this into perspective, I was playing a match with 2 of my buddies. We were playing casually and talking about life and all that stuff, and that alone was distracting enough to make me completely forget to buy perks, and it literally took me 17 rounds to notice, and that's something that just shouldn't happen. If this were to happen to me in any other game before this, I would have been absolutely thrashed by this point, and that was a good thing in the early games. Opening up the map and making progress towards your setup is satisfying because of how weak you are in the beginning of the match. It makes the game challenging from the very start, and every amount of progress is felt by the player. It's such a core part of the experience that it on its own can set a map apart from the others, and sacrificing that for the sake of variety was too steep of a price to pay. I appreciate the good intentions that were behind the making of this perk system, but some things are better left unchanged. And this, in my opinion, is one of them. In addition to the 3 launch maps that you get on disc, there was a 4th map that was only available for players who bought the Black Ops Pass, and that map was Classified, a remake of the Black Ops 1 map 5, which was one of the most controversial maps in all of Zombies. Unlike Blood of the Dead, which many consider to be an inferior version of the map that it tried to remake, Classified is seen in a much more positive light. Many consider this map to be a massive improvement over 5, and even go as far as to consider it one of the only good maps in this game. To understand why this was the case, we have to first look at the map being remade. 5 was one of the 2 launch maps of Black Ops 1. The map released alongside a far more popular map, Kino der Toten. Kino der Toten, as many of you know, is one of the most beloved maps in all of Zombies. Kino der Toten might be seen as overrated or outdated today, but back when the map came out, it dramatically increased the popularity of Zombies. And one of the main reasons why it caused this massive influx of players is because of how noob-friendly it was. The map was small, easy to learn, very spacious despite its small size, and had a very powerful wonder weapon. Now you might be thinking, what does that have to do with 5? Well, in this regard, 5 was the exact opposite of Kino. Although the map wasn't too complicated, it was very small, very condensed, and very constraining. And unlike Kino der Toten, which had the very powerful thunder gun, 5 had the Winter's Howl. The thunder gun had infinite damage and could very easily kill an entire horde with a single shot. The Winter's Howl, on the other hand, was a one-shot kill up until round 19, and it had a very slow fire rate, making it one of the worst wonder weapons in all of Zombies. The combination of a heavily condensed layout and a terrible wonder weapon led this to being a far more difficult map than Kino. 5 might not be seen as a difficult map now, but back then the average Zombies player was way worse. Back then, players were so bad that some of them weren't even aware of the concept of training zombies. So when you release a map with the difficulty of 5 in an environment where most people didn't have a fucking clue what they were doing, the map would certainly get a lot of flack. Especially when you release it alongside another map that was far easier to play and also far easier to access. Because unlike Kino, which was available as soon as you start up your game, 5 required you to either beat the campaign or look up a cheat code to play it. Because of these reasons, 5 would be a notorious map, and it would remain to be notorious for a very long time. Even up until the announcement of Classified in the summer of 2018, people's views on 5 hasn't changed much. There were some that did like the map, but for the most part the map was viewed in a negative light. But now the map was given a second chance in a game with vastly different mechanics and design philosophy to Black Ops 1. And many people were very excited to see how this map would change, which is something that I find very interesting. The idea of a map that was as hated as 5 getting a remaster would normally lead you to believe that people wouldn't like the idea. But they did like it. I don't know if people were excited about this map because it was a 5 remake, or they were more excited about the fact that we're getting another map in an already content-packed game, but I digress. Literally no idea how to make a smooth transition from this sentence, so let's start with the map's layout. Classified adds 3 new areas to the original 5 layout. The first area that was added was the main offices area in the top floor of the map, which is a massive square room with office desks in the middle. The second area that was added was the server room, which is a small room in the second floor that has a bunch of computers. And finally, the last area that was added was Groom Lake, or Area 51. The same Area 51 from Black Ops 1's Moon. The Area 51 in Classified is different from the one in Moon, as this one has debris and also takes place in nighttime, unlike Moon, which takes place in daytime and is a lot more open. Getting access to this area does require a side quest, unlike the other 2 new areas which only require you to spend points. To access this area, you need to build a signal amplifier, which is a buildable that requires 3 parts. Once you build the amplifier, you can place it by the teleporter in the middle of the war room, and now you can access Area 51, which is where Pack-a-Punch is now. Although, like 5, you do need to adjust the defcon level by activating 4 switches first before you can access the area. As for how you progress through the map, other than how to unlock Pack-a-Punch, pretty much nothing has changed. You still start from the top floor, and you have to use the elevators to get to the bottom floor and turn on the power. Sure, the perk locations has changed, and one of the switches for the defcons have changed, but for the most part, the map plays essentially the same. What isn't the same is the special enemies. Classified, like 5, has 2 special enemies. One of them is slightly different to its 5 counterpart, and another one was completely removed from the map and replaced with another special enemy. The special enemy that returned was the Nova Crawler, an enemy that will spawn alongside other zombies and when killed will explode, disorienting players and killing any zombie near the explosion. In the original map, Nova Crawlers would only spawn in the bottom floor, and as long as you never go there, you'll never see them. In Classified, this will only be the case until round 25, and afterwards they will start spawning alongside zombies. This is the only change with the Nova Crawlers, otherwise they are pretty much the same. But what about the enemy type that was removed? Well, the enemy type that was removed was the Pentagon Thief. In 5, this guy has his own dedicated round where he will appear from one of the teleporters and try to steal one of your weapons. If he manages to steal one of your weapons, you'll have to chase him down and try to kill him before he disappears. If you fail to do so, your weapon is gone. But if you manage to kill him before he disappears, you'll get your gun back, and he'll additionally drop a fire sale. And if you manage to kill him before he steals your weapon, he will give you a bonfire sale, which reduces the cost of upgrading your weapons by 80%. In all 3 of the cases, whether he steals your weapon and gets away with it, whether he steals your weapon and gets killed, or whether he doesn't steal your weapon, he will drop a max ammo regardless. In Classified, this very unique special enemy has been completely replaced with Hellhounds. Cool. Another change that Classified made was with the teleporters. In the original map, there were multiple teleporter pads placed all over the map, and walking into any of them will send you to one of the other teleporters in the map. The pad that you teleport to is completely random, and you have no way of telling where you're gonna go. This was changed in Classified, where the teleporters will now display an icon above the pad which indicates which floor you're going to teleport to. The icon will change periodically every few seconds, and now instead of teleporting to a random area of the map, it will teleport you to a random location within the floor. Another change with the map was with the characters. In the original map, the cast of characters were 4 politicians from the Cold War era. These include John F. Kennedy, Richard Nixon, Robert McNamara, and Fidel Castro. In Classified, these characters were removed in favor of the Ultimus crew. These 4 characters were in most of the World at War and Black Ops 1 maps, and they are Nikolai, Takeo, Dempsey, and Richtofen. Another change changed with the map was with the weapons. The map now has the ballistic shield, and the original wonder weapon, the Winter's Howl, has been buffed tremendously. In this version, the Winter's Howl shoots dramatically faster, has more ammo, and due to the health cap, it can kill zombies indefinitely with 4 shots. And finally, the most prominent change with the map was the mechanics. I mentioned mechanics specifically in this section because Classified is the remake that is the most affected by the mechanics of Black Ops 4. One of the main reasons why people considered 5 to be difficult was because it was in Black Ops 1, a game that was notorious for having weak weapons that barely had any ammo. And in 5 specifically, the strongest wall weapons of Black Ops 1, as well as the box, were in the bottom floor of the map, which meant that you had to pretty much open up the entire map without jug just to get strong weapons. In Black Ops 4 though, not only are the weapons significantly stronger, not only do you spawn in with the most powerful weapon on the map, but you also have double the health that you had in Black Ops 1. And if you're playing solo specifically, you have 2 free self-revives. Because of these additions, the early round difficulty went from somewhat challenging to non-existent. This, alongside the removal of the Pentagon Thief, made the map significantly easier. 5 has now been transformed from a harsh, chaotic, and difficult map to an easy, relaxing, and simple map, and the map was applauded for this. Classified, overall, is a decent map. It wasn't revolutionary, but it didn't have to be. It is only a bonus map after all. The only thing that people really had a problem with was that it was locked behind the Black Ops Pass. The Black Ops Pass costed $40 to $50 depending on whether you bought the digital deluxe edition of the game or not. The map did become available as a separate DLC for $8 4 months after the game came out, but when the game first came out, you had to pay $40 to $50 depending on which version of the game that you bought. The map certainly would have been more popular if it was available for free alongside the other launched maps, but regardless, the map was still appreciated despite the expensive price. However, I personally have an issue with this map that completely demotivates me from ever playing it over any of the Black Ops 4 maps or even over its original counterpart. The problem with this map is that it does nothing to make itself stand out, and the reason for this is that in its quest to fix the original map's issues, it removed all the aspects that made it unique in the first place. 5's random and chaotic gameplay, while controversial, was why it stood out. The map didn't provide any powerful weapons, which forced you to rely on your skills to survive. The teleporter sent you to a random location, which forced you to adapt quickly to that location. The Pentagon Thief can steal your weapons, so you had to be smart with your points to be able to deal with him early on, and doing so will accelerate your progression. The map also had a unique cast of characters that were easily some of the best in the entire series. Classified changed all of this. Now the map is just as easy as any other simple map like Kino or Ascension. The map has dogs, which is in numerous other maps, and the map now has the Ultimus crew, a cast of playable characters that are in 9 different maps. I'm fine with all of these changes, but the map didn't replace 5's defining characteristics with something different. It has no defining characteristic. And with dogs being the main enemy type in this map and the cast of characters being the Ultimus crew again, it just makes the map feel generic. It's easily one of the least unique maps in the entire series. I mean, you could say that Classified is the casual friendly map of Black Ops 4, but 9 already offers that experience and it has a lot more to offer. The only unique feature that Classified has is a buffed Winter's Howl. And sure, the Winter's Howl is a strong weapon, but it's nowhere near as cool as some of the other wonder weapons that Black Ops 4 has to offer. Again, I don't think this map is bad, but for me there's no reason whatsoever to play this map over any other map in the game. So I initially thought about talking about this Easter egg and how I think it's the worst Easter egg in the series by a landslide, but now that I think about it, I don't really think that's necessary. For those of you who don't know what this Easter egg is, you have to get to round 150 to get the ending cutscene. I think that speaks for itself. There's no need for me to add anything more than just saying that. The only silver lining with this is that if you're using the strategy I'm using, you can safely pay no attention to the screen and just watch something else in either your phone or another monitor. When I was doing this, I was watching Detective Conan on my second monitor, which, by the way, required me to read subtitles subtitles while I was playing. I was basically looking at my second monitor for most of this play session, and the fact that I managed to get away with that is a testament to how absolutely brain dead this Easter egg is. I did have fun watching one of my favorite shows while I was doing this, but clearly every ounce of enjoyment that I got from this session was from the show that I was watching and not the gameplay. I'd imagine that if you don't watch anything while doing this, you'll fall asleep out of boredom regardless of how awake you are, so I guess if you have insomnia, try doing this and see if that cures it. Other than that though, there is absolutely no reason whatsoever you should ever do this. There is nothing that you can get out of this. To me personally, Classified isn't just my least favorite map in this game, but it's also one of my least favorite maps in all of Zombies. I don't dislike this map because it's offensive or badly designed or frustrating. I don't like this map because it's just uninteresting. Whenever I play this map, the only thing I am thinking of is wanting to do literally anything else. This map doesn't have an X factor, a reason to play it. If you look at the other casual maps of Zombies, they have either a defining characteristic or a reason to play it. Either the map has a unique gimmick that sets it apart from the rest of the maps in the game, like Nuketown or 5, or that it happens to be the most accessible casual map in the game, like Town and the Giant. But for Classified, there's no reason to play it, especially when 9 exists, which is a casual map like Classified, but it offers a lot more. And because of that, I've always felt like this map doesn't serve any purpose beyond inflating the content of Black Ops 4 at launch. If you've been playing Zombies as long as I have, you'd know that one of the biggest complaints that Zombies had during Blundell's tenure is how gameplay became overcomplicated. The requirement to go for a long and elaborate quest to access some of the map's features, or in some cases all of the map's features, was something that many people didn't like. Many maps received this criticism even back as early as the map that started this trend, Mob of the Dead. But criticism towards this type of Zombies map wasn't really notable until Black Ops 3 with maps like Shadows of Evil and Zetsubo no Shima. However, out of every map under Blundell, the one map that has received the harshest criticism by far was this game's first DLC, Dead of the Night. Dead of the Night is often regarded as one of the most tedious and inaccessible maps in all of Zombies, especially back when it came out. Despite the map having multiple wonder weapons, a good layout, and an atmosphere like no other, the map's complexity alongside other detrimental factors such as the requirement to buy a $50 Seasons Pass make it quite possibly one of the most underperforming DLCs in all of Zombies. Now, throughout this section, I am going to be criticizing this map a lot. So, let's start off with the good things first. Dead of the Night is set in an English mansion filled with artifacts, statues, and architecture from multiple different time periods, ranging from ancient Egypt to the Middle Ages. All of that stuff is sporadically placed all over the mansion, and you get the sense that the guy living here is massively obsessed with history, so much so that his mansion feels more like a museum than a home. And to really sit in that feeling, the main hall of this mansion is actually based on the main hall in the Natural History Museum in London. The map also implements monsters from European folklore like vampires and werewolves and implement their weaknesses as actual usable weapons in the map. To go into more detail in this regard, there's 3 enemy types. There's the vampires, the crimson vampires, and the werewolves. The vampires will spawn alongside the zombies, and they are small and agile enemies that have the ability to leap at the player and delay health regeneration with their attacks. The crimson vampire is a red version of the vampire that has the additional ability to hold the player in place and bite their neck. Finally, there's the werewolf, a melee-only mid-round boss that has a jump and claw attack that do massive damage. Thematically, these bosses are perfect and add a lot to the already amazing atmosphere that this map has. Mechanically, these guys are pretty similar to other bosses that we've had before, but the thing that makes them unique is how the map has built-in counters to them, which leads me to the features that this map has. Dead of the Night has 2 wonder weapons, a melee weapon, and an ammo refill system. There is the wooden stake, a new melee weapon that is able to kill regular zombies until the late 20s and is able to kill vampires indefinitely. There's the Savage Impaler, which is another counter to the vampires, and is a crossbow that is a one-shot headshot kill against zombies and will also vaporize any vampire hit by it. And finally, the new ammo refill system is Silver Bullets. Silver Bullets can be equipped in all regular weapons, and its purpose is to be a counter towards werewolves. Any weapon that has Silver Bullets will do significantly higher damage towards them, but the thing that makes them so good is that you're able to constantly refill ammo for any of your guns, even if they came from the box. In short, having Silver Bullets gives you unlimited ammo, allowing you to use your favorite weapon for as long as you want. All of this stuff is already pretty cool, but the best addition to this map by far is the main wonder weapon, the Alistair's Folly. The Alistair's Folly is a revolver that shoots green explosives. Essentially, it's the ray gun without splash damage. The base variant is very underwhelming, but the upgrades is the reason why this weapon is so good. The Alistair's Folly has two upgrades, the Chaos Theory and the Alistair's Annihilator. The Chaos Theory allows you to charge the green explosive, which can result in one of two different firing modes. One of the firing modes will create a pool of liquid that deters zombies away from you and eventually cause them to explode, and the other firing mode creates a small tornado that blends zombies to death. The second upgrade, Alistair's Annihilator, gives you two other firing modes, one of which creates a portal that shrinks zombies to death, and the other creates a fire sphere that disintegrates zombies. These four different firing modes appear at random, but each of them are ridiculously strong, so the only thing that is random is the way that the zombies die. It's a fantastic wonder weapon in pretty much every single way, and it's one of the most fun wonder weapons to use on zombies. So to summarize, Dead of the Night has an amazing premise, one of the most well-made atmospheres in the series, and plenty of content to offer. So why isn't it highly regarded as other maps? This map's biggest flaw is in its inaccessibility. It's one of the most difficult maps to get into in the entire series, and this is due to two reasons. The first problem, and one that also applies to every other DLC in this game, is the price. Dead of the Night, like every other DLC barring Classified in this game, is only available via the $50 Black Ops Pass. I mentioned this specifically here because I think the Black Ops Pass affects this map far more than any other one in the game. The reason why I say that is because the other three maps exclusive to the Black Ops Pass didn't exist. So if you wanted to get this map, you have to pay $50 for three other maps that you have no idea if they're going to be good or not. But even if you ignore that, the Black Ops Pass is still an issue to this day, because if you want to play one of the DLCs, you have to pay for every single zombies and multiplayer map. Granted, the Black Ops Pass does go on sale every now and then, which drops the price to $25, but this is only the case for Xbox. In the case of PlayStation and Battle.net players, only the game's standard and deluxe editions go on sale, not the Black Ops Pass. I'd imagine that more people would play these maps if they were sold separately, but it's been almost 7 years and they still haven't done that, so I imagine that it's never gonna happen. But that's the financial side of things. What about the gameplay itself? Dead of the Night has one of the highest barriers to entry in the series, and that's because of the map's quest lines. Now, this may sound a bit contradictory, but Dead of the Night isn't a complicated map by any means. Or I think technically it isn't. None of the steps that are related to any of the quest lines are necessarily difficult to understand. All of them mostly revolve around you finding stuff that you have to shoot, melee, or pick up. So using the word complicated isn't really the correct way that I would describe the map. Additionally, the layout is also very easy to understand, as it's your typical central hub with 4 radiating pathways. So if the layout and the steps related to all the quest lines are simple and easy to understand, then what's the issue? The problem is in the high quantity of actions that you have to do and the amount of locations related to all of these actions. Every quest in this map has multiple items or symbols to keep track of, and each of them have their own spawn locations. For example, let's talk about the Pack-a-Punch quest. To get Pack-a-Punch in this map, you have to find 3 gazing stones, kill zombies by them, and gaze into them to start a challenge. There is a challenge where you have to find one of 3 clocks around the map that you have to interact with, and doing so will create a circle in front of the clock. If you manage to stay there for 40 seconds, you'll complete the challenge and it will give you a tuning fork. The second challenge requires you to find one of the Perk statues. When you find the Perk statue, the game will spawn vampires, and killing a few of them will end the challenge and give you another tuning fork. And then there's the final challenge, which is really egregious. The gazing stone will show you an item that you have to find, and interacting with that item will spawn in a ghost that you have to escort to a random part of the map. So the clock challenge had 3 locations related to it, and the the Perk challenge has 2 locations related to it. This one, on the other hand, has 7 different locations related to it. Now, granted, all of these items are close or within the center of the map, so they're not that difficult to find when you know that. The problem is that the game never tells you this, so an unfamiliar player will more likely search the entire map for these items, and doing it this way can be incredibly frustrating, especially since some of these items are really difficult to find, like the paper scroll. This one is hidden in a box in the library, and just look at it. You cannot tell me that they didn't try their best to hide it in the most obscure way possible. Since this Pack-a-Punch quest has 12 total locations related to it, the first few matches of Dead of the Night generally end up being scavenger hunts. Or if you don't have the patience for that, you'll generally end up looking up a tutorial. Pack-a-Punch quests like this one always get criticized, and I think the criticism is absolutely warranted. Most maps in Zombies have Pack-a-Punch, and the way that you get access to the machine has always been easy. Hell, some maps like Call of the Dead and Die Rise just give you the machine as soon as you turn on the power. So when you have a map like this that makes the Pack-a-Punch quest take as long to complete as a Wonder Weapon quest, the hate towards it is absolutely justified. Plus, this Pack-a-Punch quest is still not that fun to do even if you know where everything is. Since you'll generally do this in a low round, and since this is Black Ops 4, you'll never be threatened, and as a result, the entire thing is nothing but downtime. You are either waiting for the circle to disappear, waiting for the vampires to show up, or waiting for that ghost lady to stop talking about her marriage problems. Bitch, I am not your therapist. Shut the fuck up. But you know, maybe a bad pack quest doesn't necessarily mean that the entire map is bad, right? What about the other quests? Let's first go over the Alistair's Folly and its upgrades. To get the regular pistol, you have to either get it out of the box or do a side quest to get a free one. All you have to do to get the free revolver is to find 4 symbols. That's a pretty simple quest, there's nothing wrong with that. Except for the fact that each symbol has 4 different locations. Not only do each symbol have 4 different locations, but some of them are out of bounds. But you know what, that's the free side quest, you can still get it out of the box. So how do we upgrade it? In order to upgrade the Alistair's Folly to the Chaos Theory, you only need 2 parts. Okay, that's not that much. The first part is hidden behind the bookshelf, and in order to open the bookshelf, we need the shield. To craft the shield, you need 3 parts, and each of them have 3 spawn locations. So that, alongside the bookshelf part, is another 10 locations. The second part requires you to kill a werewolf with silver bullets. Now, normally to craft a buildable, you need 3 parts. To craft silver bullets though, you need 6. And of course, every single part has 3 separate locations. So that's an extra 18 different locations. This together brings us to a grand total of 28 locations without the free Wonder Weapon, and with it, 44 locations. Did I mention that you don't even get the most powerful version of the Wonder Weapon from this? Because if you want to do that, you still have to do more. To get the Alistair's Annihilator, you have to get 3 more parts. These 3 parts are not set around the map with multiple different spawn locations, thank God. Instead, you have to use your Wonder Weapon to acquire these 3 parts. One of which requires you to shoot a series of lamps with your Wonder Weapon and then snipe a bat that spawns off the last lamp. Another part requires you to use the Wonder Weapon to make zombies dig up the part from a dig pile in the forest. And the final part requires you to open up a tomb by killing vampires, which will spawn a crimson vampire that after you kill will give you the part. You know, this portion of the upgrade process is actually fun. It just makes me wonder why the rest of the upgrade process isn't like this, or why the Chaos Theory wasn't just the base version of the weapon and the Alistair Annihilator was the only upgrade that you had to do. Because if that was how the upgrade process worked, this wouldn't be one of the most tedious quests in all of Zombies. There is literally no other Wonder Weapon in Zombies that has that many spawn locations to keep track of. None. Now granted, this quest isn't nearly as long or difficult as other quests like for example the KT4 and Zetsubo or the Origin Staves. However, this is only the case for people who know every spawn location or at least have a general idea of where they are. Being one of these people allows you to pick up multiple different parts for multiple different buildables as you're opening up the map, and by the time the map is fully open you'll have everything you need. However, when you're not this knowledgeable of the map, you can't multitask and therefore you can't be this efficient. When you're looking up tutorials for the map, you're going to be doing every single thing one by one. done. For example, let's say you're looking up a tutorial on how to get the fully upgraded Alistair's Annihilator. The first tutorial is for the base Alistair's Folly, and that requires you to look up a tutorial on how to find all the 4 symbols, which generally means that you have to go around the entire map just to find them. Then for the Chaos Theory, you have to look up 2 different tutorials, one for the shield and one for the silver bullets. The silver bullets one also requires you to go around the entire map again. Then you have to look up a tutorial on how to get the second upgrade, which also, by the way, requires you to get the Pack-a-Punch. So potentially, to get the fully upgraded Wonder Weapon, you might have to look up upwards of 6 different tutorials. Because of this, a process that would normally take an experienced player 15 to 20 minutes to complete is now extended to over an hour due to the amount of guides that you may have to watch and your inability to multitask. And the worst part is that by the time your match ends and you start up a new match of Dead of the Night, you'll most likely forget a lot of where everything is because the entire process is filled with numerous small and quick actions that have dozens of locations related to them. So now you're forced to repeat this process again, and it's fucking agonizing. It's significantly worse for someone that is going in without a guide because the game doesn't show you what you're looking for like in previous games. When you open the tab menu in Black Ops 4, the game doesn't show you pictures of the parts that you have to grab, nor does it show you what the parts are for. To show you what I mean, here is what the tab menu looks like in Black Ops 2's Origins. As you can see, the map shows you the buildables that are in it, and it shows you the parts needed for all of these buildables. It shows you how many parts are needed for everything, and for most of them it shows you exactly what the parts look like. But in Dead of the Night, when you open up the tab menu, all it shows you is empty boxes. The only way this ever helps is that it shows you that a part is within a specific group of parts that are needed for a specific buildable, which isn't even the case all the time. Like, these parts don't even make a buildable, and these parts cannot be used unless you get these parts first. But even if that wasn't the case, you still have no idea what to search for, which makes it nigh impossible to find the parts organically. And by the way, this problem isn't just exclusive to Alistair's Folly, its upgrades, and the Pack-a-Punch process. This also applies to the Savage Impaler quest, although not to the same extent, but still annoying, where you have to find 6 different candles around the map. Now don't get me wrong, I am perfectly fine with complexity. Maps that have you do cool puzzles or have you do a difficult but rewarding task is something that I don't have a problem with, but the way Dead of the Night does complexity just sucks. Most of what you're doing is picking up random parts that don't stand out, with the only way to tell which items are parts is the prompt that pops out when you buy a part that tells you to pick it up. A prompt that doesn't even appear unless you're literally sticking to the part. The parts have multiple spawn locations to make it harder for the player to remember where the parts are, making the player resort to a guide or hugging the borders of the map spamming the interact button. And the only way to mitigate this issue is through sheer repetition. It's kind of like the video game equivalent of studying for an exam. The game only tests your memory and your patience as opposed to making puzzles that tests your thinking skills. It's complexity done in the most unintuitive and disengaging way possible, with its only goal being to make the task artificially harder. Something I want to mention is that people have compared this map to other previous fan favorites and said that, well, these fan favorites are also complex, why don't they get any hate? The one map that people generally compare Dead of the Night to in this regard is Origins. As someone who also doesn't like the way that complexity is done in Origins, Dead of the Night is definitely worse. In Origins, every single quest has its own set of unique steps that are vastly different from the other quests. For example, the Lightning Staff requires parkour using the tank, the Wind Staff requires you to get inside the massive robots, the Ice Staff requires you to dig up the parts from dig sites, and the Fire Staff is essentially given to you as you progress through the map. Since each of these quests are clearly very different, you can associate the quests with distinct aspects of the map. So for example, when you think of the Wind Staff, you think of the robots. This makes it much easier to remember how to do these quests in future games. Another thing with the staffs is that unlike the Alistair's Folly, these staffs do not require you to get every single buildable in the map. As a matter of fact, you don't even need Pack-a-Punch to get the ultimate staffs. And finally, the amount of locations related to each of the staffs is nothing near the Alistair's Folly. Every staff part, every chest, and everything related to the upgrade processes of every staff is in the same location every single game. The only exception to this is the Ice Staff parts, which can be dug up from from a random dig site, but none of these dig sites are anywhere near as obscure as anything in Dead of the Night. And besides that, one thing that Origins did that Dead of the Night didn't do is evolve the mode. Origins completely transformed zombies into an entirely different mode. The amount of content that Origins had far exceeded any other map before it, and arguably any other map in the series. Given how unique and expansive the map was, especially at the time of its release, it's no surprise that people were more lenient towards its problems. But the expectation towards future maps is that they would introduce this content in a far more intuitive and organic way. But when you look at Black Ops 3, the only two maps that really attempted to fix these issues were Drak and Gorod Krovi. Those two maps attempted to streamline this experience, and that's probably why these two maps were as beloved as they were. Shadows of Evil and Zetsubo no Shima might be looked at more fondly today, but back in 2016, those maps weren't highly regarded at all. And that's because they indulged in the worst aspects of Blundell's maps without transforming the mode the same way Origins did. By the time of Dead of the Night's release, it's been 5 years since Origins came out, and the map is the most unintuitive a Blundell map has ever been. And I think this map was the straw that broke the camel's back. The rest of the future maps in this game weren't nearly as complicated as Dead of the Night, and starting from Cold War and onward, they would try to make these maps as accessible as possible. Literally going as far as to tell you exactly what to do to get the Pack-a-Punch quest, and in Black Ops 6 introducing the brand new Directed mode, which tells the player exactly what to do to beat the map's Easter egg, as well as make the difficulty of the game much easier. And since every single Easter egg in Black Ops 6 requires you to get the Wonder Weapon or Wonder Weapons of the map, there is an additional guide alongside the Easter egg that shows you exactly what to do to get the free Wonder Weapon. Although I think that Cold War went way too far in the other direction, especially with them telling you exactly what to do to get the Pack-a-Punch, this massive push to make the game a lot more accessible is primarily why a lot of people, most specifically casual players, really loved Cold War as opposed to Black Ops 4. And it all leads back to this map. It's not just that Dead of the Night wasn't an accessible map, that alone wasn't the problem. The problem also was that the process wasn't fun. The only silver lining is that you do get to use some fun wonder weapons, but Zombies is already filled with fun and unique wonder weapons and numerous other maps that are far more easier and more fun to acquire. So, this is one of the more unique Easter eggs in the series. Unlike most Easter eggs where there is a linear set of steps that you have to do in order, this Easter egg has 3 different set of steps that you can do at any order. You have the choice between doing certain steps before others, and you even have the choice of doing multiple steps at the same time. Unfortunately though, not every single step in this Easter egg is that good. I'm sure all of you know about the very notorious scratch mark step in this Easter egg. You have to find 3 symbols that can spawn in a set of 7 locations, and you have to know how to order these symbols, and that is done by looking at scratch marks. Each of these 7 locations has 3 scratch mark locations related to them, which totals to 28 different locations that you have to look for. And some of these locations are diabolical. Some are on the ceiling, some are in dark corners, some are in areas that have very similar colors. This is clearly just an attempt to make the Easter egg hunt last longer and nothing else. But even if you want to ignore that step, the other steps aren't good either. There's a step where you have to bash 12 fireplace locations with your shield in a specific order, which gives you 3 gems that you have to put in 3 armor sets around the map. Then you have to escort all of these gems from the mansion all the way to Pack-a-Punch. You have to escort these gems while walking, because for some reason if you get too far away from them, they'll just stop moving. So not only is this an escort mission, but it's an escort mission that you have to do while walking. God, what a great step. There's another escort step where you have to become a ghost and find the ghost lady and take her to the cemetery. This is the same ghost lady from the Pack-a-Punch quest and the Savage Impaler quest. I love how the developers thought that they cooked so hard with this step that they used it in 3 different occasions. But one cool thing about this Easter egg is that every single one of these sets ends in the lockdown sequence. These confine you in some of the most close quarters parts of the map for a very long time, and for that it makes for a very difficult and fun lockdown. Although you can spam the Alistair's Annihilator, the zombies come in from so many different directions that you will have to move eventually, and that makes it much harder to get kills with the gun consistently, therefore maintaining the difficulty of these lockdowns. And since there's 3 of these lockdowns, they do take up a substantial portion of the Easter egg. So this map doesn't run into the same problem that Blood of the Dead does, where the fun steps in that Easter egg are so short that it doesn't really matter. But in here, you can get some enjoyment out of this Easter egg, even if some of the steps are not that good. So this is a pretty creative boss fight conceptually. In order to do damage to the boss, you have to ensnare him first. And you have to do this by turning all of these statues to a specific corner of the arena, and you have to do this while dodging zombies and the boss's attacks. The problem with this boss fight is that these attacks by the boss are so easy to avoid that at times you forget that he's even in the arena. The zombies and special enemies in this arena are more of a threat than the boss himself, which is kind of a shame because this boss fight could have been really cool if the boss himself was a threat, but unfortunately, that's not the case. Despite me being mostly negative with Dead of the Night in this section, I do like the map. I love the atmosphere, the wonder weapons, and the map design, but I just can't stand the setup process of this map. The entire process is mindlessly tedious, and it makes it much harder for me to return to this map as often as I'd like. The Easter egg can be fun, but it is also an extension of that tedium, and the boss fight, just like the 9 boss fight, leaves a lot to be desired. It could very well be argued that this is the map that killed the Blundell style of zombies. And something that I haven't mentioned thus far is that back when this map came out, it was for me the map that made me quit playing Black Ops 4. I was a part of the massive group of people that stopped playing the game at that point, because to many people, this was the map that destroyed their faith in the game, myself included. And it's such a shame because the map that came out after this was an absolute masterpiece. But before we talk about that, we have to talk about something else. Something that was pivotal to this game's tragic failure. In the months leading up to the release of Black Ops 4, one of the main selling points that was talked about is the Chaos storyline. This was a brand new story that would be told alongside the older Ether story. It wasn't known at the time which story would have more priority, as each story got the same amount of maps at launch, but what was clear is the amount of passion that Treyarch had for the story. Out of both storylines, Chaos was the one that had the most marketing by far. It was the story that was primarily talked about in all of the reveal events. The Collector Edition was based around it, and all of the Chaos maps were completely original, unlike the Ether maps, which were all remakes. The passion towards this storyline was apparent, but this passion wasn't shared by the community at all. In fact, reception towards the storyline was so bad that the Chaos storyline was discontinued after the release of DLC 2, resulting in the cancellation of multiple Chaos maps, as well as leaving the story unfinished. But how did this happen? How could a story that was hyped up so much by its developers die so suddenly? Well, let's take a look. First, let's go over why the story was made in the first place. In an interview done by Game Informer, Jason Blundell talks about how the Chaos storyline came to existence.
Well, for multiple reasons. First one being that the Ether story we've been telling for the last 10 years. So that is incredibly complicated, incredibly involved, and actually our fan base loved that about it. But there's a part of our community who've come in a little bit later on. It's almost unfair to them to be able to kind of jump into that 10-year story and kind of find their footing. So we felt that now was a perfect time to start a new story. The time is right because as we were making the 10-year story, we'd have ideas that we'd like, oh, we could put that in, but it felt like we were jamming it in. So we had all these great ideas that started just stacking up on one side. The Ether story got to a certain point, which was kind of critical. I can't kind of go into too much detail, but I was like, okay, now is a good time. We've got all these great ideas here. Let's start afresh, and that means we can also not only kind of cater to our 10-year fan base, but also a new fan base that's starting as well.
So essentially, this storyline was an avenue for Treyarch to implement existing ideas that they weren't able to before without forcing them into the story. Additionally, this story could have the ability to capture a new audience that the Ether storyline wasn't able to due to it being difficult to start getting invested into a story that is 10 years old. Now, right away, just from that explanation, we already have a problem. He basically says that the main foundation for the story is purely gameplay related, as in the main reason the story exists has nothing to do with telling a story. He does say that he wants to attract a brand new audience with the storyline, but the way that he frames that reasoning tells me that he only thinks it's a potential byproduct of the storyline. It's not an actual goal that they're striving for, but I could be wrong on that. So anyways, what is this story about? The story features Alistair Rhodes, a British archaeologist that is on the hunt for ancient relics called Sentinel artifacts. These artifacts are believed to be the key towards gaining the power of an ancient ancient material called Prima Materia, which is essentially the Chaos version of 115. Also hunting for these artifacts are the cultist group called the Order, which wants to use these artifacts to force humanity to evolve. Alistair believes that these fellas are evil, so he wants to get the artifacts before they do. The best way I can describe the Chaos storyline is to say that they're a Call of Duty Zombies twist on Indiana Jones or the Uncharted games. However, there is one massive difference between them. Unlike Indiana Jones or Nathan Drake, where the explorer is the main character as well as the character that we spend the most time with, Alistair is not the main character of the Chaos storyline. As a matter of fact, he has less than 1 minute of screen time in the entire game, and other than radios, he has 3 lines of dialogue total, all of which is him narrating his own letters. So then, if he's not the main character, who is? Meet the main character of the Chaos storyline, Scarlet Rhodes, a woman that has an American accent despite being British and is the daughter of Alistair Rhodes. Scarlet resents her father and has no interest in his mission or anything related to archaeology. She and her father were separated for 15 years until one day she receives a letter from him that says that he is in trouble and needs her help. She then arrives at his mansion to see that he has been kidnapped by the Order, and after an unsuccessful attempt of saving him, she then tracks down and gathers the 3 people that Alistair trusts the most. These include Master Chemist Stanton Shaw, Mexican spy Diego Nicali, and former French gangster Bruno Delacroix. The story takes them from one place to another as they slowly get more leads into where Alistair is so they can save him and defeat the Order. Chaos's main twist on Indiana Jones's concept is that the adventurer is the one that the main characters are after, which isn't necessarily a bad idea. The idea of a group of characters going on a journey to save a person they regard highly and be suddenly thrusted upon a world of myth and legend that they weren't prepared for could have made for an awesome story. Unfortunately though, Chaos would have a lot of problems that significantly hinder the story. Let's first start with Alistair himself. As I mentioned earlier, Alistair himself is barely in the story, so the only way we can know who this character is by seeing what our characters say about him. Out of the 4 characters, the character that talks about him the most by far is Scarlet, his daughter. The rest of the characters don't talk about him nearly as much, and when they do, it's generally in conversational quotes between them and Scarlet. And in pretty much every single one of these conversations, as well as other miscellaneous quotes that Scarlet has about her father, she pretty much always talks about him in a negative light.
Okay. The artifacts are gone. What now? Why couldn't I have had a normal father? This is just the icing on the fucking cake. Well done, Dad. If messing up my life at least 3 times already wasn't enough, you just went and did it again. He did, yes. I thought he made that part up. His usual flim-flam. So much of his work was delusional. Pointless. My father, Alistair Rhodes, didn't give me up. He tore our family a fucking part. Resolve? Right. Let me tell you something, Bruno. I'm the only reason he didn't squander the entirety of the family fortune on his stupid fucking adventures. My father disappeared from my life when I was 12. It took me a long time to come out the other side, to make my own life, figure out what I wanted to do. And suddenly, he's gone. And I'm bouncing from relative to relative, care home to care home. Sister to sister.
You see, Alistair, he's not normal, he's delusional, he's too obsessed with his adventures, he abandoned her at 12, he messed up her life, he tore the family apart. How am I supposed to be invested in this rescue mission when the person being rescued is almost constantly portrayed as a piece of shit delusional deadbeat by his daughter? Speaking of his daughter, Scarlet is a terrible main character. Her dialogue is generally delivered with bitterness, hate, and anger, and her whole personality is centered around her shitting on her father with the force of 1,000 people with diarrhea, which again makes it much harder to get invested in her mission to save this person. The character is obnoxious, and that obnoxiousness is made more apparent when you compare her to her teammates, who are portrayed in a more fun and comical manner. Shaw is a drug addict losing his mind, Diego is a self-centered ladies' man, and although Bruno is a more serious character, his personality helps making the other two's comical nature stand out more, and he's not as obnoxious as Scarlet. The rest of the cast is a lot more entertaining, but they don't have that much depth to them as they are side characters orbiting around Scarlet. So the only thing that you can get invested into is a plot centered around a girl with daddy issues. There's really nothing more to this story. if you're only playing the game. If you look at the other supplemental material, you'll see that there's a lot more to the story. In fact, there is an entire subplot dedicated to the other members of the cast, as well as Alistair and the Order, but it's not in Black Ops 4. It's in the comic series. There's a comic series called Call of Duty Zombies Volume 2, and it's a 4-chapter comic where each comic covers one of the Chaos crew members and their relationship with Alistair. The first chapter covers Bruno, the second one covers Shaw, the third one covers Diego, and the final one covers Scarlet. The main difference between the story being told in-game and the one being told in the comics is that Scarlet isn't the main character. Alistair is. The comic covers Alistair's pursuit of what he calls ultimate knowledge, and he will constantly put himself in danger for the sake of his goal. This led to him having multiple confrontations with criminal groups like the French gangsters and the Order. The main difference between Alistair and Scarlet is their attitude towards their goals. One is constantly complaining about her goals, and the other is far more passionate and driven, and as such is a far more likable and entertaining character. The comics also provide much needed context for the story, like for example how Alistair and the Order became enemies, how he got kidnapped, and why he asked Scarlet to recruit those three in particular. This additional context makes the story that is told in Black Ops 4 much more engaging, but there is a problem with the comics. Nobody read them. There's 3 reasons for this, and the first reason is that they were so poorly marketed that most people to this day don't even know about their existence. When I say that they were poorly marketed, I mean that they were basically not marketed at all. There was no advertisements about them in the game, there was no official post talking about them in any social media account, not even a fucking paid sponsorship to YouTubers that can show it off to their fans or something like that. Because of its non-existent marketing, and because it's not part of the game, it's a completely different source, most people didn't even know about this. The second reason being that in order to understand the Chaos storyline in its entirety, you have to go out of your way to experience the story in an entirely different medium that is separate from the game. And I don't think this needs to be mentioned, but video games and comics are 2 completely different ways to experience a story. And I don't think most Call of Duty fans are people that enjoy reading comic books. Going from a video game that has interactivity, voice acting, music, and animation to comics that have none of these factors can be very jarring. And the thing with this is that not only is there important plot points in these comics, but the entirety of the first act is in the comics. So when the game came out, people were thrusted into an ongoing story with extremely crucial context missing, such as who is Alistair? Why do these characters care about him? How and why did he disappear? And so on. And the final reason is that when the game came out, most of these comics didn't even exist. When the game first launched, the only chapter that was out was the first one. The second chapter came out a week after the launch of the game, the third one didn't come out for another 2 months, and the final chapter didn't come out until a month after that. So the first act of the story wasn't even available to the public for 3 months. And what made this so much worse is the release cycle of the Chaos maps themselves. For those of you who don't know, the map 9 wasn't supposed to be a launch map, it was actually supposed to be DLC 1, and the DLC 1 map, Dead of the Night, was supposed to be a launch map. The reason why this happened is because the dev team had scheduling issues with the celebrity cast in Dead of the Night, which resulted in the map being delayed. This change in the release cycle that the developers probably weren't prepared for heavily affected the storytelling of both 9 and Dead of the Night. Since 9 and Voyage featured the same characters, the writing in both maps had to be similar because the developers had no idea which map players will play first. The best example I can provide to show you this is the character's reaction to the Catalyst zombies.
Très ingénieux. The water monster reinforce the others, like undead medics.
When the characters see the Catalysts in 9, they act like they've never seen them before, which doesn't make any sense because they've already seen them in Voyage. But the reason that this was done is because, again, the developers had no idea which map players will play first. This results in the character interactions and dynamic being the exact same in both maps, and the character that this affects the most is Scarlet. Scarlet's obnoxious asshole demeanor was supposed to be something exclusive to Voyage.
All I wanted to do was acquire an artifact and find my damn father, not do Whatever this is.
In Voyage, all she wanted to do was a simple heist mission. But this simple heist mission suddenly turned into a fight for survival against massive hordes of zombies, a burning man with a shovel, a disgusting bug monster, and a massive eyeball. So, while irritating, her shitty attitude does make sense. But in 9, she is willingly going into this craziness, and she should be more trusting of her teammates. But instead, the events of Voyage were barely acknowledged, and she's still the same, which, again, makes no sense. And as for Dead of the Night, the map was clearly written to be the introduction to the Chaos storyline. It was supposed to be the introduction of the Sentinel artifact, the cult, and the main character, Scarlet, as seen in the end cutscene. However, Voyage and 9 have been out for 2 months by the time Dead of the Night released, where we got introduced to the Chaos storyline, including the main elements that Dead of the Night was supposed to introduce. And as a result, the map's story is completely redundant, halting the story to provide little context to things that we already know, and the story didn't progress until DLC 2, over 5 months after the game released. Not only did this kill the momentum of the story, but it stagnated the character arc of the entire cast. There are so many problems with this story, and we didn't even come to the worst problem yet. It's the fact that this story, with all of its problems, was trying to compete with the Ether storyline. Now granted, the Ether storyline's way of storytelling is also very complicated. It's a story that spans across multiple games and comic issues, and it has its ending retconned like a billion times. But the thing that sets the story apart from Chaos is fan investment. Back when World at War came out, Zombies wasn't a massively overcomplicated multiverse. In fact, there wasn't even a story. The game just had you spawn in a random bunker and kill zombies until you die. Then in Shin Onuma, we got one radio that can be very easily activated by interacting with it. Radios then became the main source of exposition for the story. They would generally tell you stories about the location that you're in and what happened to it. Over time though, the methods of storytelling would gradually increase, and the story would gradually get more complex. In Black Ops 1, we started getting intro cutscenes like in Kino and 5, then in Ascension we started getting main quests. A concept that at first was very primitive, but it got expanded upon gradually. Notice how I'm repeating that word. The story didn't start off complex, it gradually got there. People got hooked into the story when it was simple and easy to follow, and by the time the story became too complicated for a regular person to keep up with, there were still many people that were invested. So how did the average person keep up with the story? Well, they had someone in YouTube explain it for them. A few people took it upon themselves to make videos that were hours long explaining the story for people who couldn't be fucked to put the pieces together themselves. And this essentially became Call of Duty Zombies' main method of storytelling. The community. The success of stories like Ether is heavily dependent on community engagement, which can only be earned through slowly developing the story. If you don't develop the story with patience, well, you get the Chaos storyline. Right from the get-go, Chaos tells its story through intro cutscenes, character dialogue, audio logs, difficult main quests, outro cutscenes, and a comic series. Major plot points are scattered throughout all of these forms of storytelling, and if you want to understand the story, you have to explore all of them. If you want to learn about Prima Materia and how the Sentinel artifacts came to be, you need to listen to the audio logs in 9. If you want to learn about the Order's motivations, you have to listen to the audio logs in Voyage. If you want to know why the characters are so eager to help Alistair, you need to read the comics. If you want to know where this red light from Bruno's forehead came from, you can't get it out of the game, or even from the comics, you have to watch a music video uploaded to YouTube. Chopping up the plot points of the story into tiny pieces and scattering them across half a dozen methods of storytelling made the story confusing and hard to understand instead of being mysterious and engaging. Starting the story off with this really shitty method of storytelling completely deterred the new players that they wanted to attract, and as for the die-hard Zombies fans, most of them didn't pay that much attention to Chaos because they were more invested in the story that they've been following for 10 years, especially since they were hyping up this game to be the end of the story. But then when they decided that they wanted to halt this final arc for a brand new story that didn't even have a fraction of the fan investment, the attention that Chaos did start to get was negative, and obviously so. What the fuck did they think was gonna happen? To say that this was a poor decision is a massive understatement. It's an indication of them being completely out of touch with their fanbase. It's such a shame too, because this story had a lot of potential. The Chaos storyline has a good premise and some really good ideas, but they were too hasty with it. Maybe if it was told normally without trying to compete with another story, it probably would have succeeded, but unfortunately, we'll never know. Excitement towards the second DLC map of Black Ops 4 was very minimal, as at that point in time many people left the game, either going back to previous Zombies games or playing other games entirely. The news that this map was going to be another Chaos map didn't bring people back, as Chaos was one of the reasons why people left in the first place. As a result, Ancient Evil was bound to have an underwhelming launch due to the sheer lack of trust people had in Chaos, which is such a shame because this map is fantastic. Ancient Evil is, in my opinion, the best Black Ops 4 map by a landslide and one of the best Zombies maps of all time. Ancient Evil is a great map for numerous reasons. It's well designed, has an amazing atmosphere, fun wonder weapons, and one of the best Easter eggs in the series. But all of these strengths that the map has derive from one single thing that the map does impeccably, and that's the way that Ancient Evil utilizes mythology. There are many maps in Zombies that have mythology, legends, or supernatural concepts integrated into them. There's ancient civilizations, there's Cthulhu, there's dragons, and numerous other concepts that have been implemented in maps before and after Ancient Evil. And these concepts can make a map more unique and interesting, but the one map that utilizes its respective concept the most is Ancient Evil. The map's foundation is heavily revolved around Greek mythology as well as the real country of Greece, and every aspect of the map is affected by these two things in one way or another. Ancient Evil is set in the Greek city of Delphi, a city that has a real-life counterpart and a mythological counterpart. The map itself is split into two different sections, and each one explores one of these two counterparts to Delphi. You first spawn in the part of the map that is set in the real-life city. Here's a slight plan of the actual Delphi, and you spawn right here in the city's landmark, the Temple of Apollo. The playable space is set around this landmark, and every part of this area is faithfully recreated. The second portion of the map is heavily based on its mythological side, so the playable area isn't based on any real-life location. Instead, it's based on the story related to Delphi in Greek mythology. The story is about how the Greek god Zeus used two eagles to find the center of the world. The eagles met above the area where Delphi would be at, and Zeus dropped a special stone to mark the area as the center of the world. In Ancient Evil, this story would be a part of the Pack-a-Punch quest where you have to free two eagles from their cages, and once that's done, they will meet where the stone was placed, which unlocks Pack-a-Punch. Even if you're not knowledgeable of any of this stuff, you can clearly tell that there was a lot of effort put into the map's aesthetic. And the best part is that in this case, it doesn't impede the map's gameplay. The map's two sections are well designed, and each of them play an important role in the match. The city side of the map has the majority of the perks, 2 of the 4 wonder weapons that the map offers, and is the bigger and more spacious section, making it better for survival. The other section of the map is smaller and less spacious, but it offers the rest of the wonder weapons, the Odin perk, and the Pack-a-Punch. Both areas are connected by teleporters that are everywhere in both sections, which allows you to very easily alternate between them. To get access to these teleporters, though, you need to get access to the mythological side of Delphi first, and you do this by finding a bridle that you can use to ride the mythological horse Pegasus. It's a very simple process too. All you have to do is find one part that can spawn in 2 locations. As a matter of fact, this map in general is beginner friendly, and this is due to the addition of a new character that is related to Delphi, the Oracle. In ancient Greece, oracles were essentially prophets that would deliver messages that were believed to come from the gods, and these messages would often be told in a cryptic or vague way that has to be interpreted. The city of Delphi was one that had an oracle, and this was cleverly integrated in Ancient Evil as a way to access the map's content through vague messages. In other words, the Oracle of Delphi acts as the map's hint system. The hints that the oracle provides are related to how to access the other side of the map, how to get Pack-a-Punch, how to get the wonder weapons, and how to upgrade them. The cool thing about the Oracle is that, unlike the modern Zombies games, she doesn't blatantly tell you exactly what to do. The information that she does provide for you is very helpful, but it doesn't completely remove the sense of exploration. What actually happens is that as you progress through the map, the information that she provides for you becomes more and more vague. At first, she'll tell you to find the golden bridle, but she doesn't tell you where you can find it.
The winged steed will aid you. Seek his golden bridle.
Then when you're on the other side of the map, she'll tell you to free the eagles of Zeus, but she doesn't tell you exactly how to free them.
You must find the eagles of Zeus and strengthen your weapons.
And then when she's talking about where you can find parts for the wonder weapons, she gives you riddles.
Seek the primordial weapon in the chaos of the treasuries.
And then when you actually get the wonder weapons, all she'll tell you is that you can actually upgrade them, but she doesn't tell you how.
Gaia will share even more power with those struggling to find it.
This is what I've always wanted from Blundell maps. It gives you enough information to know where to look, but still requires some level of effort from the player to solve. This is easily one of the most, if not the most, intuitive map that is a part of Blundell's catalog, and it genuinely makes the map so much fun to explore. Another thing that the map does impeccably is its unique weapons. The map has 6 different weapons, and each of them are related to characters from Greek mythology. There's Apollo's Will, the map's shield, which allows you to throw explosive spears at zombies. There's the Pegasus Strike, a new piece of equipment that allows you to summon Pegasus, who will distract and kill all nearby zombies. And finally, there's the 4 main wonder weapons, the gauntlets. There's the Gauntlet of Gaia, the Gauntlet of Hemera, the Gauntlet of Charon, and the Gauntlet of Uranus. In their base state, the gauntlets shoot 3 explosive orbs that will target 1 zombie each. In their base state, the gauntlets are honestly pretty terrible, but they can be upgraded. Each gauntlet receives an additional charge attack when upgraded. The Gauntlet of Uranus allows you to create a vortex that blows zombies away. The Gauntlet of Charon allows you to create a pool of blood that drags zombies to hell. The Gauntlet of Gaia allows you to create a tremor that kills any zombie within range. And finally, there's my favorite of the gauntlets, the Gauntlet of Hemera. The reason I love this gauntlet over the others is because it allows me to do my favorite thing from the Injustice games, which is summoning a laser beam from the sky. Unfortunately, you cannot condense this laser beam into a sphere and throw it at your opponent and blow up the entire area, but it's close enough. Welcome back, Lex Luthor. I love the gauntlets, man. All of them are powerful, fun to use, and they're great eye candy. A balancing factor with the gauntlets is that they don't have that much ammo, so in turn you are rewarded for using them in the most effective way possible. Out of all of the gauntlets, the Charon gauntlet is easily the strongest one, as the charge shot can attract nearby zombies and it lasts for over 20 seconds, but the others are still really good. Plus, you might as well get all of the gauntlets anyway, because all of them are very easy and fun to acquire. To get the base versions of the gauntlet, all you have to do is find an empty gauntlet and take it to one of the shrines around the map. These empty gauntlets are generally found inside a vase, under a pile of dirt, a pile of rocks, or inside a red crystal that has purple particles emanating from it. Once you take your empty gauntlet to one of the shrines, you'll be stuck inside a very small circle in front of the shrine. Inside the circle, you have to defend yourself from zombies that spawn from the shrine and regular zombies. After you do that, you have the base weapon. As I said, very simple. You break a thing, and take it to the thing, and that's it, you have the weapon. Now, normally I would shit on the map for having too many spawn locations for these empty gauntlets, which, by the way, is 20 locations. But the reason why I don't do that for this map is because this map has a hint system, as I mentioned earlier. Every time you go to the spawn room after you unlock Pack-a-Punch, the Oracle will give you a riddle on where one of the gauntlets is. And these riddles are not hard to solve at all. Like, some of them literally flat out tell you where it is. But still, I wish there was less locations. 20 is still way too much. As for how to upgrade the gauntlet, each gauntlet has its own specific challenge that you have to complete in order to upgrade them. The Hemera challenge requires you to find 3 mirrors that you have to shoot your gauntlet with. These mirrors will then bounce back the light orb that you shot to a bull near you, which you have to take back to the Hemera shrine within a certain amount of time. The Gaia challenge requires you to find 3 plants with red crystals in them and shoot those plants with your gauntlet to spawn a spawn plant that you have to then take back to the Gaia shrine without running. The Charon challenge requires you to kill zombies in this puddle of water, and with each kill the water becomes more and more red. Once the water is red enough, you have to drink the water and try to find 3 coins and take them to the Charon shrine. The challenge with this is that you cannot regenerate your health after you drink your water until you finish the challenge. And finally, the Uranus challenge requires you to send the zombie into a large arrow, which will spawn a small feather that you have to shoot with your gauntlet until it lands into the Uranus shrine. You then have to do this with 2 more arrows, and the challenge is complete. Out of every 4 wonder weapon set, the gauntlets are by far the easiest set to acquire in the entire series. From the moment that you spawn into the match, you can get an upgraded gauntlet within 8 minutes in round 2. It's a massive difference from something like the Rise and Dragon Origins, where it generally takes 20 to 30 minutes to get an upgraded wonder weapon. And every single one of these gauntlets takes like 3 to 5 minutes maximum to upgrade. Additionally, every single time you get an upgraded gauntlet, the game will send you to a location outside of the map. You're given a version of the wonder weapon that has unlimited ammo, and you can use it to your heart's content to see how it works. I absolutely love that they did this, even though they absolutely did not need to. Everything that I've mentioned so far about the map would be more than good enough to make it a fantastic map, but it still has a couple other things. The map has a challenge system, and in my opinion, it's the best challenge system in all of Zombies. Can you tell that I really love this map? If you've played Cold War Zombies, this challenge system might be familiar to you, as it's basically the trials from Cold War. In the spawn room, you can pay points to start a challenge. The more that you participate in this challenge, the better the reward that you'll get. You can choose to redeem the reward that you get after finishing the challenge, or you can start another challenge to increase the rarity of the reward. Lower tier rewards will give you weak pack-a-punched weapons and drops, and higher tier rewards will give you pack-a-punched box guns, as well as the possibility of a free perk or a free self-revive. As for the challenges, they range from killing zombies in a specific way, to killing zombies with a specific weapon, to killing zombies within a specific location, and being in a location for a while. I love this system for a lot of reasons. The challenges are random, which makes it more replayable. You have the freedom in picking the type of reward that you want, and you can also do these challenges an infinite amount of times. That in particular is the reason why I love it so much, because I can do this as many times as I want to, and even in the high rounds, it's still useful. You can get max ammos and full powers out of this, which is obviously huge for high rounds. But since it's locked behind a randomized challenge system, you'll be going into multiple places around the map, even in the high rounds, for these rewards. The only problem I have with this challenge system, which really annoys me, is that for some fucking reason, you can only get 2 free perks at max. Once you get 2 of these, the game will stop giving you free perks, even if you lose them, which is stupid. Look, we've been allowed to have 9 perks before, and this game allows you to have 9 perks, so why not just give me 9 perks? It's really dumb, but whatever. Another thing you can do on this map is that you can upgrade your gauntlets a second time. The upgrade is minor, as all it does is increases the ammo of your gauntlets, but the quest to getting this upgrade is a lot of fun. By throwing a spear on top of this massive bowl, going to each of the shrines and killing a catalyst that correspond to them, and then filling up these shrines with zombie souls, you can take each of the gauntlets to the pack-a-punch machine to start a challenge. Whenever you take a gauntlet to the pack-a-punch machine, you'll be sent to the secluded area that you went to use that upgraded gauntlet for the first time. You will be locked within the small area, and you have to kill everything that the game throws at you. Fighting in these small areas can actually be pretty difficult if you don't know what you're doing, but it's still a fun challenge regardless. Genuinely, I am struggling to find things to criticize about this map. I guess the only thing that is not good is the special enemies, but even those aren't terrible. The Catalysts and Blightfathers return, and the Catalysts are pretty much a non-factor because of the gauntlets, and the Blightfather feels a bit repetitive at this point, so I guess that's the only problem that I have with this map. As for the new enemies, there's the skeletons, which can only be killed either by headshots or by your gauntlet, and then there's the Gigany, which is a multi-armed giant that has a spear, a sword, and a shield. Like the Catalysts, the skeletons are also a non-factor, again because of the gauntlets, and I personally like the Gigany. He's a bit of a bullet sponge, but he is a lot of fun to fight. Again, I am genuinely struggling to find things to criticize about this map. It is damn near flawless in my opinion. It's everything that I ever wanted from a Blundell map, and it is especially everything that I ever wanted from the Chaos maps. Alright, you guys know the drill. Time for another terrible Black Ops 4 Oh shit! I cannot believe I'm saying this. There is an Easter egg that is actually good. It's not even just good, it's one of the best in the entire series. For one, this Easter egg is not that long. It can be very easily completed under an hour. Despite that though, there is a lot of steps in this Easter egg, and most of them are good. The steps that aren't good are not bad either, and some of them are so short that they only last a few seconds. The steps that do take a longer time are challenging steps, and each one challenges you in a specific way. Some of the steps require precision, some require timing, some require good knowledge of the map, and some require a combination of any of these 4 things. There's even one step that additionally requires team coordination if you're playing co-op, and I love how the map can challenge you in all of these different ways. Other than the boss fight, which I will get to shortly, my favorite step in this Easter egg has got to be the Raw lockdown. For this step, you have to get the Gauntlet of Hemera and give it to the Raw statue. Once you do this, the statue will shoot a beam that will try to destroy the wall on the opposite side of the statue. While this is happening, skeletons will try to block this beam. If they block this beam for long enough, you'll fail this step. I initially hated this step because I thought it took too long and most weapons aren't strong enough to constantly kill these skeletons while also killing all the other zombies that surround you. But then I realized I was doing it in too high of a round, and maybe if I did it at a low round I wouldn't have these issues, which did turn out to be the case. Even if you don't like this step, for some reason it's very buggy, so you can very easily skip it if you want to. You can either glitch the skeletons so that they don't stop the beam, or you can just stop them from spawning entirely. That is what I initially used to do, but I stopped doing that because I grown to really like this step. And again, this isn't the only good step in this Easter egg, there's multiple good steps. In my opinion, this Easter egg is pretty much flawless, and it's easily one of the best in the entire series.
Rise, my steed! Rid me of this vermin!
Dog, you need to drink some water. Holy shit. What a great boss fight, dude. Everything about this boss fight is just great. The presentation, the arena, the enemies that you fight against, all of it is fantastic. The main gimmick with this fight is that the attacks that are done by both Pegasus and Perseus are meant to make the playable space more limited. Pegasus creates a line of fire that splits the arena, and Perseus will periodically throw fire projectiles at you. The fire created by both of these attacks will linger for a while, and obviously if you step in that fire you will be burned. So the best way to beat this fight is to be as quick as possible. The mechanics of this fight are very simple and easy to understand, but because of how small the playable space is, it's still a challenging fight. And the presentation of this fight just speaks for itself. At first you'll be fighting Pegasus, and then when you complete the first phase, the island you're in will just get fucking nuked. And then after you complete the second phase, Perseus will stab Pegasus and then steal his powers Ornstein and Smo style. Also, the fact that you're fighting two of the most notable characters in Greek mythology is also a plus. The only problem I have with this fight is that I wish it was longer, and I wish both bosses had more attacks. But other than that, this boss fight is great, and it's the cherry on top of this amazing Easter egg. Ancient Evil is what I wish every Chaos map was like. It fully commits to its specific theme, unlike Voyage. It has an incredible selection of weapons, unlike 9, and the setup isn't just well designed, it's one of the highlights of the gameplay, unlike Dead of the Night. The Easter egg is my personal favorite in the entire series, and the boss fight is a lot of fun as well. If there is any reason to ever play Black Ops 4, it's Ancient Evil. To me, this map is a top 3 zombies experience, and it would probably be even higher if it weren't for Black Ops 4's mechanics. This map really shows the Chaos story at its full potential, and it's such a shame that the Chaos story was killed right after this map. Sometime after the release of Ancient Evil, it was confirmed that the next map was going to be a part of the Aether storyline. This map was called Alpha Omega, and it had a lot of hype behind it, as it was the first Aether Zombies map we've gotten in nearly 9 months. The intro cutscene for the map was posted a couple of weeks before the map released, and this cutscene seemed like it was setting up the final map of the Aether storyline to be about the Great War, an interdimensional war that was referenced all the way back in Black Ops 3. Unfortunately though, this map was not great. Alpha Omega, while not a completely terrible experience, is one of the most underwhelming maps of all time. The map heavily relies on fan service to supplement its content, bringing back locations, enemies, and weapons from previous maps, and it has little to no major innovations of its own. Let's begin with the premise. Alpha Omega is a remake of Black Ops 2's Nuketown Zombies, a zombies version of the Black Ops 1 multiplayer map Nuketown, which is a small 3-lane map set in a suburb that was used to test nuclear weapons. Nuketown is one of the most iconic multiplayer maps in not just Call of Duty, but all of gaming. This map is so iconic that in every online shooter that allows people to create their own custom maps, you'll most likely find a remake of Nuketown in it, like for example GTA 5. Because of how beloved the map was, Treyarch decided to bring back the map in Black Ops 2's multiplayer, and additionally make a zombies version of the map and release it as a bonus DLC during the launch of that game. This zombies version of Nuketown was a very polarizing map due to its main gimmick. In this map, the Perk and Pack-a-Punch machines would fall from the sky every few rounds, and the machine that you'll get is completely random. For example, sometimes you might get Juggernog in the first 5 rounds, and sometimes it might not show up until round 23. This mechanic is made significantly worse by the fact that Nuketown, even with every machine present, is still a difficult map to play due to how small and condensed it is. So restricting the use of some of these resources for rounds on end made the map significantly harder to play. Nuketown is generally seen in one of 2 different ways. Either the map map is boring, shallow, with an unfair difficulty, or it's a survival map that provides a simple but interesting and unique challenge. I happen to be in the group of people that likes this map, but regardless, the map was treated as nothing more than a bonus experience that came alongside the main content. The map was small, only offered 4 perks, and didn't even have its own wonder weapon. It didn't really offer that much because, well, it didn't try to. This meant that if the map were to be remade, there's much more freedom to expand upon the original experience as opposed to something like Blood of the Dead, where the map being remade is already very large and very complex. How does Alpha Omega expand upon the Nuketown experience? Out of every remake in this game, Alpha Omega is by far the most drastically different than its original counterpart. The map has a ton of new areas as well as a new set of wonder weapons, enemy types, and unique features. So let's start with the new areas first. In the original Nuketown, you only had access to 2 houses and the street between them. In Alpha Omega though, you now have access to 4 additional houses, and the street that was connecting the 2 houses has now been extended to connect all of the 6 houses. Additionally, there is an underground bunker that is connected to all of the houses that you can now access. The map has gotten almost 4 times larger, which would normally make the map too big, but this is an exception. Nuketown was already a small map, so increasing the size to that extent was definitely needed. The map is now bigger, which is good, but how does it handle the setup process? The biggest difference with Alpha Omega is that the machines no longer fall from the sky like the original Nuketown, but instead they are now on the map from the very start of the match. The Pack-a-Punch now has its own quest. It has you do a lockdown sequence in the generators area and repair 4 ventilation units that are each in different houses that have green smoke. It's a very easy process to figure out, and I applaud the map for making a simple Pack-a-Punch quest. As for new features, let's start with Rushmore. After unlocking Pack-a-Punch, a supercomputer named Rushmore will activate the following round. Rushmore has a keypad that allows you to input codes for various purposes. This is mostly used for the Easter egg and the wonder weapons, but you can also input various number codes to get free buffs. Some of these buffs include decreasing the price of perks, getting bonfire sales, and slowing down zombies to walking speed. You can only input 1 code at a time, and you can't use the same code more than once per game. Rushmore can help you a lot while setting up or while doing Easter egg steps, but beyond that, he doesn't give you that much value. Next up is the teleporter pads. This buildable allows you to place pads in designated locations around the map that you can use to teleport between them. These things are kinda pointless because, like, the map isn't big enough to warrant their use, but it's there for people that want to use them. As for side Easter eggs, there's a free perk Easter egg and a free self-revive Easter egg. To get the free perk Easter egg, you have to shoot the head of every single mannequin in the map. Once you do this, you have to fight an onslaught of robots the following round, and once you kill all of the robots, you'll get the free perk. Alternatively, you can knife the heads of the mannequins, which will spawn a robot behind the population sign. And you have to, I am not kidding when I say this, get this robot a mannequin girlfriend and take them to a private location. I am not kidding, that is an actual thing you can do on this map. Finally, there is Insanity Mode, a side Easter egg that when completed will teleport you to the middle of the map and close all of the new areas to emulate the original Nuketown Zombies layout. Once you end the current round, the game will send you straight to round 200. Rounds will progress as normal, but now you can no longer access any of the new areas of the map. This feature is really fun at the start, but it gets old really fast when you spend half an hour killing zombies and the round doesn't change. It takes about an hour and 20 minutes to finish this round, and doing so doesn't reward you in any way, which really sucks. However, I do recommend trying out this Easter egg if you want to get an idea of what it's like to be in that high of a round. But enough of the side Easter eggs, let's talk about the map's wonder weapons. Alpha Omega's main wonder weapon is the Ray Gun Mark II. The Mark II is a weapon that was introduced all the way back in Black Ops 2's Buried, and it's a 3-round burst version of the ray gun. This was an additional secondary wonder weapon alongside the ray gun, as it was also retroactively added in all of the Black Ops 2 maps as well as the next DLC, Origins. The weapon was also brought back in Black Ops 3 in the Chronicles maps as, again, another secondary wonder weapon. And it was also brought back in all of the Ether maps in Black Ops 4. But in Alpha Omega, the Mark II has 4 additional variants that you can acquire. There's the Raygun Mark II Z that turns the weapon into a shotgun and when upgraded becomes fully automatic. The Raygun Mark II Y, which turns the weapon into a rocket launcher that does no damage to the player. The Raygun Mark II X, which changes the firing mode from 3-round burst to fully automatic, and when upgraded it becomes akimbo. And finally, the Raygun Mark II V, which shoots an electrical laser beam and has the ability to regenerate ammo. All of these variants are very strong, especially the laser one that can kill zombies zombies, stun them, and has unlimited ammo. And furthermore, the process for getting these wonder weapons is also very simple and easy. The process to getting these weapons is essentially the same. Find the variant's canister using its respective alternate ammo type, do what Rushmore tells you to do, and fill up the canister with zombie souls. And all of them can be upgraded by simply pack-a-punching them. All of that stuff is great, however these wonder weapons are very underwhelming in terms of style. I said this all the way back in the Voyage section, but I believe the style of the wonder weapon is very important. To reiterate what I said earlier, Zombies is filled with plenty of powerful weapons, so the only thing that sets them apart is their style. And the wonder weapons of Alpha Omega are nothing more than modified ray gun Mark IIs, which is incredibly lackluster. Yes, the Mark II is a fan favorite weapon, but it's been in 17 previous maps, 19 if you want to include Blood of the Dead and Classified, and the main wonder weapon of this map is the 20th entry of a legacy weapon. It's not even just that, even if you ignore the fact that these are just modified ray gun Mark IIs, the concepts of the wonder weapons themselves aren't that cool. Like, one of them is a laser shotgun, the other is a laser submachine gun, and the other is a laser rocket launcher, and then the final one is just a laser beam. It's just worsened by the fact that these are variants of the Mark II. It also doesn't help that other parts of the map suffer the same issue. In this map, you're playing in the 7th iteration of Nuketown, where your main wonder weapon is the 20th iteration of the Mark II, and the boss enemies of this map are the 9th iteration of the Dogs, the 6th and 7th iteration of the Nova Crawler, and to top all of that off, this map and all of its new areas were already seen in Blackout 9 months ago. Sure, it isn't exactly the same, but the most interesting part of Nuketown, which was the bunker, was already explored, which makes this already uninteresting map even more uninteresting. The only truly unique thing about this map is Rushmore, which is cool, but it's not a good enough feature to make this map stand out. To reiterate, I don't think this map is terrible, and I don't necessarily have a problem with reused assets. The problem is that the last two DLCs were chaos maps that clearly had a lot of budget and effort put into them, so you'd expect the Ether maps to be treated in the same manner, but then when an Ether map does come out, it turns out to be another remake that's clearly not treated in the same way at all. But you know what? Maybe if you set that aside, the map is fun to play. Because other than the wonder weapons, which are uninspired, and the environment, which is bland as fuck, there's nothing wrong with this map, right? Unfortunately, that's not the case. The map has another problem that makes it substantially worse. Earlier I mentioned that this map had the 6th and 7th iteration of the Nova Crawler. The two variants of the Nova Crawler in this map are the Jolting Jack and the Nova 6 Bomber. Each of them spawn in their own specific locations, and each of them have their own abilities. The Jolting Jack spawns on top of the map, and they are Nova Crawlers that can spit out projectiles as well as have the ability to teleport around you to avoid fire. The Nova Bombers spawn in the bunker instead, and they have the ability to spit out projectiles at other zombies, which buffs the zombies' health and increases their speed. The Jolting Jacks are fine, they can be easily avoided by just training normally, and while they can teleport in front of you to block your path, they are very weak, so they can be easily taken out. However, the Nova Bombers are a completely different story. While they are easy to take out, their ability to instantly give surrounding zombies a massive buff to their health and increase their speed is ridiculous. I would be fine with this buff if you're able to counter the Nova Bombers easily. The problem is that you can't. The bombers are virtually impossible to counter. They generally spawn out of sight, they can buff multiple zombies at once from a distance, and they spawn very frequently. Some of you might have noticed that this enemy type is similar to another enemy type in this game, which is the Ice Catalyst in the Chaos maps. And although I don't like the Ice Catalysts either, they're not nearly as bad as the Nova Bombers. When Ice Catalysts spawn in, they have a very lengthy and loud animation, and since the Ice Catalysts spawn within the horde as opposed to the Nova Bombers that spawn far away, you can very easily counter them given that you have a powerful weapon. Additionally, the amount of Ice Catalysts isn't the same as the amount of Nova Bombers. This is because in the Chaos maps, there's other catalysts that the game can pick from, but in Alpha Omega, the only special enemy type that will spawn in when you're in the bunker is the Nova Bombers. So if you ever come to the bunker, you have no choice but to deal with these buffed zombies unless the Nova Bomber just happens to spawn by you. And even if that happens, it's not like one Nova Bomber will spawn in a single round. As for the buffs themselves, I don't necessarily have a problem with the speed buff, I more so have a problem with the health buff. All the health buff does is make the rounds take artificially longer in a cheap attempt to make the game more challenging. Now some of you might be saying, well, you can very easily avoid the bombers by simply not going into the bunker. which is true. If you never go to the bunker, then you'll never encounter these guys. The problem is that the bunker takes over half of the map. Furthermore, if you're by most of the entrances to the bunker on the top, these guys will still spawn in. The reason I say most is because there's only one exception in the entire map where they don't spawn in, and that's the yellow house backyard. So the only two areas that you can play in without these guys spawning in is the middle of the top floor and the backyard of the yellow house. Look, this map is already unremarkable. The least that it can do is allow me to go wherever I want without being punished for no reason. So, how's this Easter egg? When I first beat this Easter egg, I initially thought it was great because of how coherent it was. And if you know anything about zombies Easter eggs, you know that most of them either make no sense or force you to find the most ridiculous solutions to very simple problems. Oh, you want to fix this elevator? Sure, all you have to do is get 3 cogs. That should be easy, especially since this is a facility. There should be plenty of those lying around. Oh, what's that? You wanted me to blow up a plane? For a cog? Are you telling me that this massive facility doesn't have spare parts lying around for potential maintenance work on an elevator? Well, I guess not. Time to kill some poor fucker out of the sky. This isn't even the only example I can provide in this Easter egg alone, but I'm getting sidetracked here. I'm supposed to talk about Alpha Omega. The steps in Alpha Omega's Easter egg make sense, and each of them organically lead into the other. And initially, I thought that alone made this Easter egg great. And then I played it a couple more times, and then I realized that there really isn't that much beyond that. All you're doing in this Easter egg is following the orders of the computer Rushmore, and those consist of a sequence of uneventful and unoffensive tasks. Things like calibrating clocks, or getting codes behind paintings, or escort this Nova Crawler for like 15 seconds. One step that does annoy me is the one where you have to escort an orb, and the pathing for it is deliberately designed to take as long as possible, but beyond that, no step in this Easter egg stands out. The Easter egg is pretty short, and it's probably the easiest in the game, but in terms of quality, it's pretty mediocre. This boss fight is okay, I guess. The way that this boss fight works is that you have to fill multiple soul boxes to charge a thing so that you can beat the boss. You don't attack Avogadro until the very end of the fight, and all you do in that is just spam your specialist until he's dead. That said, he does show up while you're filling up these soul boxes, and he does attack you, and he does do a lot of damage. So I guess in that regard, it's better than the Dead of the Night boss fight, but I mean, not by much. To give the boss fight some credit, it can be intense at times, and you can actually get killed if you're not careful. And you know, the way that Avogadro gets out of the pyramid is really cool, and his design is also really cool. But the problem that I have with this boss fight is that it doesn't feel like a boss fight. It more so feels like a soul box step with hazards. Again, it's not a bad final encounter, but, you know, could have been better. Alpha Omega feels like the closest thing that we have to an official custom zombies map. Never mind, it's the second closest. It's an amalgamation of iconic elements from multiple different areas of Call of Duty tastelessly put together with no true ideas of its own, and the little innovation that the map does attempt is awful. In terms of the overall quality of the map, Alpha Omega isn't terrible, but it's certainly underwhelming given how little new it tries to attempt. The Easter egg falls in that same category as well, as it's not a terrible one, but it's not noteworthy either, and the boss fight doesn't feel like a boss fight at all. Overall, this map was a disappointment, and unfortunately, the next map would follow suit. In every COD game, the last DLC of a zombies game has always tried to create an experience that felt grand and ambitious. They all tried to create the finale of their game in a unique and interesting way, even if these ways were controversial like Revelations or Moon. And if done right, the map can change people's perspective of the game as a whole. So, what was Black Ops 4's final map? Well, it was a remake of an old map. Again, Tagged or Toten, like Alpha Omega, is a map that I wouldn't necessarily say is a completely terrible experience. In fact, I would say this map is arguably the best remake in the entire game. It had interesting ideas, there's a lot to do, and in some ways it did make improvements to the map that it tried to remake. Unfortunately though, Tag der Toten suffers immensely due to expectations that the map would never be able to meet. This map took the slot of the final DLC map of Black Ops 4, and it's meant to be the end of the Ether storyline. As such, the map is expected to be epic, bombastic, and a massive game changer, things that a remake of an old Zombies map could never achieve. Let's get right into it, shall we? Tag der Toten is a remake of Black Ops 1's fan favorite, Call of the Dead. Call of the Dead is an incredible map. It had a great and unique cast of celebrity characters, it increased the scale of Zombies maps to a point that was never seen before, and it introduced the first ever mini-boss in Zombies that came in the form of late film director George Romero. However, not everything in this map was perfectly implemented. The layout of the map had some issues, George was a pretty controversial mini-boss, and the wonder weapons weren't the best in the series. So in theory, a remake or a remaster of this map would improve these things, and as a result it would be something that people want. Hell, many people wanted this map to be remastered in the Chronicles pack in Black Ops 3 like Mob of the Dead. So if Call of the Dead was in the exact same position as Mob of the Dead, why were people excited for Blood of the Dead and not Tag der Toten? The thing is, Tag der Toten released in what is easily the worst possible position to be in. So far, every Ether map in this game is a remake, and none of them had made significant improvements that completely transformed those maps into something far greater. I would even go as far as to say that every single remake in this game is inferior to the map that they're trying to improve, and since the quality of these remakes has been consistent in this regard, it's very easy to assume that Tag der Toten would also receive the same treatment, which in turn made the map much less exciting. But of course, there is always room to be surprised, so let's see what they did with Call of the Dead. Tag der Toten's main change is in its layout. Call of the Dead already had a decent layout. The map was large but well connected, and you could get across the map easily using fast travels, whether that was through the zip lines or through the flinger. However, the layout wasn't perfect. The fast travels can only be used in 3 areas, and one of them was completely pointless. Some of the pathways of the map were blocked by debris, which forces you to unnecessarily take a longer path. Tag der Toten changed this layout, and not only did it improve it, but in a way it turned it into one of the map's features. The map is far more interconnected and there's no more dead ends. The map did this by adding new spaces that connected the old areas and added 7 new fast travels. These new fast travels are so well placed that you're never far away from one, and when you use a fast travel, it will lead you to an area that is also not far away from another fast travel. With such well-connected map design, you can be anywhere on the map and get to anywhere else very quickly, even if it's across the map. But why did I describe this layout as a new feature? Well, the map's navigation can be affected by ways that aren't buying doors or turning on the power. This is due to 2 new buildables, the Dynamite Bomb and the Heat Pack. The Heat Pack is a 3-part buildable that allows you to run and slide on icy water that would normally slow you down. Not only does this make navigation on the map faster, but it also turns these massive patches of water into giant training spots. Furthermore, zombies are slowed down to walking speed when they are in this water, which makes training in these areas much easier. As for the dynamite, that can be made by getting 3 parts from one of the map's special enemies, the Fire Zombie. When these zombies are killed by being frozen, they will drop one of the 3 parts to get the dynamite. These enemies can be frozen by being killed while standing on the water, throwing snowballs they can pick up from the ground, and one of the wonder weapons. Dynamite allows you to open alternative pathways that are blocked by debris, which in turn makes the map more interconnected. Personally, I love when zombies maps experiment with different ways to open the map, like how in Buried you can give alcohol to a mentally ill giant man to smash through debris, or in Shadows of Evil you can use beast mode to grapple to areas that you normally can't access and then open them from the other side so you can access them without beast mode. So I do appreciate that this map tried something different, although I do have 2 complaints. In the original Call of the Dead, one of the fast travels was the flinger. This can be accessed by turning on the power, and the way that it works is that when you're standing on top of it, it will send you across the map. In Tag der Toten, not only do you have to turn on the power, but you also have to fix the flinger to use it. There's also another flinger on the map that also has to be fixed to be used. To fix these flingers, you have to take their gearbox and place them on top of the lighthouse and wait for a certain amount of time for them to be done. Then once they're fixed, you can take them back and put them in the flingers, and now they work again. It's nothing but unnecessary busy work that's there to waste time, and it sucks. My other complaint is that you have to build the dynamite from scratch every single time you want to use it, which again does nothing but waste time, but beyond that, the layout of the map is very good. But enough about the layout, let's talk about the other innovations in this map, starting with the Hermit. This is a new character that you'll find on top of the lighthouse, and he he exists to help you with stuff. He can fix the flinger gearboxes for you, which again should have been fixed from the beginning, but whatever. He can activate Pack-a-Punch for you if you give him a blue rock, and he'll help you in certain Easter egg and side Easter egg steps. I like the idea of the Hermit, but he feels completely underutilized, and I wish he played a much larger role in the gameplay. Instead of being just there to fix stuff for you, he should have been a merchant that sells you unique weapons, equipment, and other miscellaneous items that could help you. That would make him much more involved, but I guess he's fine the way that he is. Another feature of the map is the challenge system. Throughout the map, you'll find these totems that you can interact with. Once you interact with a totem, it will start a set of 3 challenges. The first 2 challenges of these totems generally involve you killing zombies in a certain way, and the third challenge generally involves you doing a random task, like for example making a soup or throwing snowballs at SOS messages. Most of the end rewards from these challenges are pretty pointless, except for the one that gives you a self-revive, but regardless, the challenges are very easy, and it never hurts to have a challenge system in any map, so they're appreciated. Another new feature is the Golden Pack-a-Punch. The Golden Pack-a-Punch is the same as the regular one, except this one will additionally give you the double tap ability that you were only able to get after Pack-a-Punching the weapon an additional 4 times. I would say that this is a great change, but all it really does is fix a problem that should have never been there in the first place. Like, why is it 4 times instead of 1? Infinite Warfare did this. In that game you can spend 10,000 points for a second upgrade as opposed to 2,500 for a minor upgrade. Most people's problem, at least I think anyway, with this Pack-a-Punch system isn't the cost, it's just the amount of time that you have to spend upgrading things. So I guess it's cool that this map removes the need for that, I guess. Anyway, let's talk about the special enemies in this map. In the original Call of the Dead, there was only one special enemy, George Romero. In the beginning of every Call of the Dead match, this lovely fella will spawn alongside the players, and he will constantly follow the nearest player and try to hit him with a stage light. If George ever hits anyone or gets hit himself, he will stun all players on the map with a scream, and then continue to follow the nearest player while being significantly faster. The only way to slow him down was to take him to the nearest pool of water. George can be killed, and doing so will reward you with a free perk and a death machine, but he has 250,000 health. If you don't know how much that is the equivalent to the health of a zombie on round 67. The number is so high that most weapons in the game cannot kill him with full ammo, and they require a max ammo or even 2 max ammos to fully kill him. Furthermore, his already colossal amount of health multiplies by the amount of players that are in the match. So if you're ever playing a 4-player game, his health will be multiplied by 4, therefore his health will be 1 million. George was easily the most criticized aspect by people who didn't enjoy the map, as his near indestructibility made it outright impossible to camp, and although you can kill him, he will come back within a couple of rounds. However, for people like myself that enjoy this map, George is one of the best parts of it. Not only does he heavily encourage teamwork, but he also gives snipers a purpose, a class of weapons that is rarely ever used by anyone seriously. George is one of the main reasons why Call of the Dead is such a unique map. Fighting him is fun and very rewarding, and him being a constant looming threat adds tension to the map. So of course, Toten removed this unique boss and replaced him with hellhounds, fire zombies, and electric zombies. Oh my god. Okay, look, I am not against removing him, okay? If anything, it's probably for the best that they didn't include him. What I have a problem with is that he wasn't replaced with anything that was as unique, interesting, or threatening. Instead of doing that, though, they bring back dogs again, and they add fire and electric zombies in a game that already included these enemies in 4 different fucking maps. To give the map the minimum amount of credit, you can at least get rid of the fire zombies by getting all of the dynamite pieces and not placing it down, but that's honestly the only redeeming thing about these special enemies. But you know what? Maybe the wonder weapons make up for it, right? Maybe those things are unique and interesting.
I'm entrusting you with the Wunderwaffe DG Scharfschütze.
I'm just speechless, man. There's the Wunderwaffe Sniper, which is a reimagined version of the original Wunderwaffe from World at War. The original Wunderwaffe shot bolts of electricity that can chain upwards of 10 zombies and instantly kill them. This wonder weapon made an appearance in 8 different maps before Tag der Toten, making this the 9th iteration of the weapon. This time, though, it was changed to be the Wunderwaffe Sniper. The gimmick with this thing is that it has a higher amount of ammo, and it can also chain more than 10 zombies zombies, given that you shoot them in the head. The other wonder weapon that was added was the Tundra Gun, which is a reimagined version of the Thunder Gun. The Thunder Gun shoots compressed air that sends zombies flying, and it would make an appearance in 7 different maps. The Thunder Gun would also return in this map, and would have a second variant called the Tundra Gun. The Tundra Gun is the Thunder Gun, but instead of shooting compressed air like the Thunder Gun, it shoots snowballs that essentially act like a rocket launcher with a freeze effect. Yes, these weapons are very strong. However, like what I said with the Mark IIs, this is a mode that has dozens of powerful wonder weapons. A wonder weapon that takes you to higher round doesn't instantly make it fun or creative. And I think we can all agree that a Thunder Gun that shoots snowballs is not creative. And of course, I forgot to mention that the Thunder Gun comes back in the final map of the Zombies game. Again, granted, there is the Samantha box, which is a new piece of equipment, and this piece of equipment is actually pretty cool. With this thing, you can summon everyone's favorite angry German child who will lift all of the zombies surrounding her and then blow them up. It's a cool weapon, no doubt, but unfortunately, it's only a piece of equipment, so you can't use it as often as you'd want to, which means that I have to use these other wonder weapons that aren't as fun to use. And this leads me to the biggest problem that I have with Tag der Toten. Tag der Toten being the final map of the game means that it's held to a much higher standard, as if this map came out in an earlier DLC or at launch, it wouldn't face as much scrutiny. But since it's the final map of the game, these problems aren't easily forgivable, especially when you compare it to the other final maps. Let's look at Black Ops 1's Moon, for example. Moon is a map that is so alien compared to any other map in Zombies, and that's because of how many different mechanics that were introduced in it. For example, the map doesn't even have rounds in the beginning, instead spawning in zombies that gradually get faster, stronger, and higher in numbers. Then when you teleport out of no man's land and the game actually starts, you get introduced to other major mechanics like the anti-gravity and the lack of oxygen. The map even has a hacker system that has dozens of uses, and these mechanics make the map play like no other. And that's without mentioning the new wonder weapons, the new perk, the new enemy types, and the immersive atmosphere. Sure, some of these mechanics are divisive, but what can't be denied is how innovative this map was and how these innovations to an extent are unique to it. Then you look at Tag der Toten, and that map looks unambitious in comparison. And that's not to say that the map doesn't try anything, because it certainly does, but it doesn't turn zombies into a completely different experience as a final map should do. Even Revelations was a better attempt at a finale, with it trying to create a map that is a cultivation of multiple mechanics, wonder weapons, and enemy types from key maps of zombies and blending them seamlessly into one experience. I just wish that I can live in a universe where they actually succeeded with that concept instead of scratching the surface, but hey, it's at least something. Tag der Toten, on the other hand, doesn't even try to provide something on that level, and instead it feels like the mindset behind the map was just to finish the story. And look, I understand that the map was probably a victim of the terrible conditions that the developers were in at the time, more on that later, but I can't help but feel disappointed every time I play this map. And although I do like this map to an extent, it is absolutely not the finale that we deserve. Before I get into the Easter egg, there is something that some of you might have noticed that I want to talk about. If you've skimmed through the timestamps of this video, you might have noticed that there is no section about the Aether storyline like I did with the Chaos storyline. The reason why is because the Aether storyline specifically did not affect Black Ops 4 in any significant way, or at least not to the same extent that the Chaos storyline affected it. To elaborate further on this, Chaos is clearly supposed to be the primary focus of this game, and Aether was probably not supposed to be in this game because in Black Ops 3, in the last map Revelations, when the cutscene ends, it literally says "the end." I'm almost certain that Aether was never supposed to be in this game and it was shoehorned in for... I mean, it could be a lot of reasons. Maybe Treyarch wasn't happy with the reception of Black Ops 3's ending, so they wanted to give it another go. Or maybe Activision forced Treyarch to put the Aether storyline in the game somehow as a form of insurance. Regardless, Chaos was clearly supposed to be the main focus, if not the only focus of the game. The failure of which led to the entire story, as well as multiple maps being cancelled. These catastrophic results is why I thought it was important to talk about that storyline, but nothing of of that sort happened to Aether. It could even be possible that the failure of Chaos affected Aether as well, because after the release of Ancient Evil, the budget for zombies fell off a cliff. Again, there weren't any results that were this catastrophic because of Aether, which is why I didn't talk about it. Anyway, back to the Easter egg. So this Easter egg is the exact same thing as the Alpha Omega Easter egg, except it takes longer and it has worse steps. You'll follow the instructions of one of the characters and you'll be told to input dials or find pieces of flesh or use traps on cubes or power up this door and so on. In addition to this, there's a really annoying step in this Easter egg with red orbs that happens twice. You have to find 3 orbs and throw snowballs from a distance and then shoot them. Each of these orbs spawns in a specific chunk of the map, so you essentially have to go around the entire map just to find them. It's not as bad as the bird step in Blood because, you know, the map layout here is actually good and you can easily travel to any area quickly. But you still have to do it twice and it still takes a long time and it's still very boring, so, you know. It's unfortunate how underwhelming this Easter egg is, especially when you compare it to the other final map Easter eggs. And that's not to say that those other Easter eggs are perfect, but they do at least try to attempt something grandiose. Like, Revelations, for example, has a really dumb Easter egg, but the portion where you have to fight a bunch of Margwas in an ever-changing arena was a pretty massive highlight of that Easter egg. This, on the other hand, only attempts to create a satisfying ending to the story, which is fine, but it doesn't really attempt anything with the gameplay. And it also feels like there's this attempt to artificially extend the length of certain Easter egg steps to make the Easter egg as a whole longer. The one step that really stood out to me in this regard is the one where you have to get the elemental shard behind this door. Like, at first you have to collect 2 stones, heat up one of them, and freeze the other to place them here to get a fuse. And then once you take the fuse to the door, it turns out that, oh no, it's not enough, so you have to shoot batteries on the electric towers with the Wonderwaff. But oh no, it's still not enough, so you have to power up 3 generators with electric zombies. And hey, would you look at that? That sure did the trick. We got the elemental shard. Couldn't you have just made it so that once you get the fuse, you complete the step? Why was it necessary to add these 2 other additions to it? Look, I feel like I am overemphasizing this step that isn't that awful anyways, but it stood out to me because I feel like they could have replaced this padding with something more interesting. But I don't know, man. This Easter egg is pretty generic, all things considered, and it's pretty disappointing that the game ended with this. So, unlike Alpha Omega, where there is the illusion of a boss, this has no boss. You essentially have to follow this thing until you get to the other side of the map, and then you'll be surrounded by zombies. There is no boss, unfortunately, but despite that, this final encounter is actually pretty good. The first thing I want to mention is that I absolutely love how the entire area goes from ice to volcano. And the best part about this is that when you beat the fight, the game gives you the opportunity to look at the entire map while in its volcanic state. Mechanically though, this fight is very simple. You're in a small circle and zombies will surround you and you have to kill them. It's not groundbreaking, and if you get an explosive weapon for this, then you can very easily cheese this fight. But if you don't go in with that, this fight can be challenging. That said, this is the final encounter of the final zombies map in Aether, and although I do enjoy the gameplay of this final encounter, I feel a bit disappointed that we didn't get something more fantastical and climactic. Toten is a map that I can best describe as unfortunate. This map wasn't just supposed to be the end of Black Ops 4, but it was also supposed to be the end of Aether. And I believe that in terms of story, which I know I haven't talked about in this video, I think it did somewhat succeed in it, even if the ending was a bit divisive. But in regards to the gameplay, it's not a good finale. I appreciate the improvements that this map does to the Call of the Dead layout, but it really doesn't do more than that. And to me personally, the wonder weapons especially are a disappointment, and that also somewhat goes to the Easter egg and the boss fight. Toten in a vacuum is a fun map with a lot to do, but it's hard to put this map in a vacuum considering what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be the great ending that me and everyone else wanted it to be, but unfortunately, it doesn't even come close. One of the things that has always confused me about Black Ops 4 was that Tag der Toten was the last map that the game received, and that it only came out with 8 maps. The reason that this always confused me was that in Black Ops 3 we got 14 different maps, and granted 8 of them were remasters and 1 of them was a remake, but the game still had almost double the amount of maps that Black Ops 4 had. What makes this even more confusing is that Black Ops 4 released with 4 maps instead of Black Ops 3's 2, but it turns out that this game was supposed to have a lot more content. Let's start with factions, because that's easily the most infamous one. Factions was a feature that was talked about before the game even came out, and it was supposed to come out at launch, but the feature was constantly delayed all the way until Ancient Evil, where it was silently scrapped. We do have an idea of what this system was supposed to be, at least in its initial stage. Factions was supposed to be some kind of challenge system, and the reason that we know this is because when the game came out, there was a Dark Ops challenge that was completed by doing the Factions callings. And if you don't know what callings are, it's basically Black Ops 4's fancy way of saying challenges. Now, obviously this Dark Ops challenge was impossible to do as the feature wasn't out yet, but regardless, it must have meant that it was supposed to be some kind of challenge system where you do challenges for certain factions, and that would have rewarded you with, well, nobody knows. I heard from some cut content videos that was supposed to reward you with intel related to the storylines, and other videos said it was supposed to reward you with cosmetics, but it was probably going to reward you with, well, it has to be something. Unfortunately, we'll never know because, again, the mode was silently scrapped after the release of Ancient Evil. My guess is that they may have wanted to rework the mode into something different than it was supposed to be at launch, but then they eventually gave up on it. Maybe they wanted to heavily expand upon the original idea that they had, or maybe they wanted to turn the feature into a competitive faction mode like the faction system in Mortal Kombat X. For those of you who've never played MKX, here's how that faction system worked. In that game, you and every player have to pick between one of 5 different factions, and in each week you'd participate in a faction war. Each faction has to collect as many points as possible through various ways as they play the game, and the faction that has the most points by the end of the week will receive rewards. Now, that's probably not how the system was going to work in Black Ops 4, but something like that would have been huge for the game. A zombies mode with a weekly competitive element to it would have motivated so many people to constantly play the game, especially if the rewards that came from the system were enticing enough. Hell, you might have even motivated some people to do some of the game's Easter eggs and side Easter eggs, and maybe even speedrun them if that's part of winning the challenge. But even if Factions was a lot more underwhelming than that, it not being in the game was a massive shame, and honestly, very shitty on the developers' part. Ever since the release of the game, they were reassuring people that this system was going to come to Black Ops 4 multiple times, but then they scrap it, and not only do they scrap it, but they didn't even make a single post about scrapping it, and instead left people thinking that it was going to come at some point when it was never going to. I understand that something may have happened during the development process that forced them to scrap it, but at least have the fucking decency to tell people about it and not leave them in the dark about a feature that they were excited for before the game even released. Again, it's very shitty on the developers' part for them to do this, but I'm getting sidetracked, let's move on. Next up after this is the apparent cut super Easter egg. In every map besides Dead of the Night and Tag der Toten, there is a secret room locked behind a door that can only be unlocked through modding the game on PC. You can find one in the provisions area in Voyage, by the shield buildable table in 9, in the infirmary of Blood of the Dead, in the pig labs in Classified, by the amphitheater in Ancient Evil, and by the APD area in Alpha Omega. These doors can be opened by going into the game's code and force opening them from there. I unfortunately don't know how to do that, so I'm going to leave a link to a video in the description made by Mr. Dalek JD that shows you what these rooms look like on the inside. How these doors were meant to be opened and what was supposed to be inside them is unknown. The most agreed upon theory for how to open these doors is that you open them by doing every single Easter egg in the game, And some people speculate that the reward behind these doors was going to be a golden Pack-a-Punch machine. I think that's definitely possible, and maybe you might even get something that's even better. But it also could be that you can get something really underwhelming like a free self-revive or something. But the last and most important thing I want to go over is the cut maps. As for maps that did exist at one point but they were cut, there is only one confirmed map, and that is a map that is titled ZM Blue. To elaborate, the maps Ancient Evil, Alpha Omega, and Tag der Toten have code names that are named after certain colors. Ancient Evil is titled in the code ZM Red, Alpha Omega is titled ZM White, and Tag der Toten is titled ZM Orange. Because of this ZM Blue that people found in the code is confirmed to be a map of some kind. The map is most likely a Chaos map that was supposed to be a continuation of Ancient Evil, but details surrounding what the map is supposed to be doesn't exist. This is the only map that is confirmed to exist, but I personally believe that there is at least one other map that was cut. Now, to be clear, I don't have irrefutable evidence that this map exists, but I am convinced that there is at least another Chaos map alongside this ZM Blue. The reason why I believe that is because of the way that the Chaos storyline was paced in Black Ops 4. To do a story recap, in the end of Ancient Evil, everything went to shit. Alistair was turned to stone, Bruno kills Shaw, and it's revealed that the Oracle, aka Medusa, betrayed the crew. This is obviously a pretty terrible situation for the crew, and my theory is that the next map will be them recovering from this and establishing an actual final boss of the story, whether that will be Medusa, the Order, or both. Then the map after will be the actual final battle and the conclusion of the story. Now, some of you might think that they would try to juggle all of these elements in one map, which isn't impossible, but it's very unlikely given how none of the Chaos maps tried to juggle that many elements in one map. Not to mention that there was this interview done by Treyarch to promote Ancient Evil, and in this interview, Jason Blundell very heavily implied that Black Ops 4 was going to have another season of content.
Yeah, so this map represents the last map of the Chaos story for this season. So
Jason, where are you going with this?
So
what could it mean?
So this is the cliffhanger here.
Maybe a step too far, but it's cool.
He can go higher in pitch if he tries. So this is
the wrong pants.
this is the last one of the Chaos story for this season.
And if this game was going to have another season of content, there is no way that that entire season was just gonna be one Chaos map. So, based on that, I am 100% sure that there is two Chaos maps. There's also the very notorious Zombies Chronicles 2. Every single game since Black Ops 4 has been rumored to have a Zombies Chronicles 2, only for it to not release by the end of the life cycle. But out of every one of these games, Black Ops 4 was the one that actually sounds the most believable. First off, the original Zombies Chronicles was 2017's best-selling DLC on the PlayStation Store, so there's a pretty large monetary incentive to make a Chronicles 2. And this only applies to Black Ops 4 and not the other games because it's the last game to have paid DLC in the series. The second reason is that this game is the end of Ether, and since it already had 4 remakes, it would have been very fitting to end the story with Chronicles 2, featuring the only 3 maps that didn't get a remake or remaster from the old games. And finally, there's plenty of assets from Transit and Buried in the game that were used for Blackout and multiplayer, and it's possible that those were supposed to be used in Zombies in the same way that the Nuketown portion of Blackout was used from Alpha Omega. Now, again, all of this stuff is circumstantial, but my reasoning does lead me to believe that these maps could have existed if Black Ops 4's development was a lot smoother. Which leads me to the question of why was all of this stuff cut from the game? This is probably because Black Ops 4 went through development hell. This game had development issues pretty much the entire year. The game's stability at launch was abysmal and remained to be abysmal for months. Games would crash randomly as you're playing any of the maps, with some crashes happening as early as round 2. And these crashes were so common for so many players that it would be more likely for your match to end in a crash than for it to end in a game over. This crashing issue lasted for so long that the classified round 150 Easter egg was literally impossible to do legitimately for 2 months. The main reason why I am mentioning this is because the developers refrained from releasing any meaningful updates to the game because they were so focused on fixing this crashing issue.
But it's also no secret that we had a bit of a bumpy start as well, and that's something that the team has been plowing all our effort and energy into, was to kind of get that stability there, and we're in a very good place now. You know, comparable to kind of other zombie offerings, but a very good place, and so that now allows us to then move our focus to other features and other things that we're developing.
Then, later on in the year, an even worse situation happened. For those of you who don't know, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, the Call of Duty that came out in 2020, was not supposed to be developed by Treyarch. Instead, it was supposed to be developed by Sledgehammer and Raven Software, but the game eventually got scrapped due to it going nowhere during its development, and Treyarch was forced to step in and develop a game in their stead. So now they had to create a game within 2 years instead of the 3 that they were expecting, and on top of that they were hit with a global pandemic that made things harder than they already were. And this most likely forced them to abandon things that they were planning to implement in both Black Ops 4 and Cold War, resulting in both products being worse than what they should have been. And I imagine that must suck for the developers, because they never got to see their full vision realized. Look, my opinion of this game might be mostly negative, but I would have loved to see all of this stuff come into the game. I would have loved to have a potentially crazy super Easter egg reward. I would have loved to see a faction system that would have completely set this game apart from the rest. I would have loved for Chaos to actually reach its conclusion, even if I'm not personally the biggest fan of it, and I would have loved for Ether to be sent off with Zombies Chronicles 2 as a passionate gift to the community that stuck with this franchise for so long. But unfortunately, this game was robbed of its full potential, and the tragedy is, we will never see the same amount of potential again. Because of Black Ops 4's reception, Zombies is a game mode that is no longer trusted by the publishers. The budget is now much smaller, the team is almost never given the creative freedom to experiment with new ideas unless they work with unaltered assets that were made for a completely different game mode. They are forced to cut content out of the new games so that they can be artificially reintroduced as new content later down the line. They are forced to work on multiple projects at the same time for games that aren't even under their name, and at any moment they can be forced to completely forgo development of a game just so that they can work on the next one. Treyarch will never have the creative freedom that they used to, and it hurts that this is the result of Black Ops 4's reception. It will never matter how good the marketing of a future game is or how promising it looks, because the creative vision of every game forward will forever be tampered with by soulless hacks that only plan to make this beloved franchise as soulless as they are just to gain from it, while everyone else suffers the consequences of their greed. Call of Duty Black Ops 4 Zombies is clearly an ambitious project. Passion, effort, and love can be seen in every part of it, and it's obvious that the Zombies team genuinely cared about this game and gave it their all. But as much as I admire the ambition behind this project, I unfortunately can't love it. And I tried, man. I really did. I really wanted to love this game as much as the developers did, as much as its biggest fans did, which is why I played this game for months and months on end and went out of my way to see almost everything that this game has to offer. But after I did, the only map that I truly loved was Ancient Evil. The other maps do have great elements that I enjoy, but they either have problems that worsen the experience, or they leave me with a lot to be desired. And it doesn't help that the game's mechanics degrade the maps and at times completely ruin them. Sure, Black Ops 4 isn't a terrible game, not even close, but I expected it to be better. This game should have been better, it should have been the best that Zombies has to offer. But not only did it not do that, but it also affected the future of the franchise for the worst. Black Ops 4 was a game that was expected to take Zombies to new heights, both by us and the developers, but it instead became the catalyst that led to the regression of Zombies. And that's why Black Ops 4 is a tragic disappointment.